this.
I know, I think so. All right, so I've got 7 o'clock. If staff is all set and it looks like CNET is ready, I will go ahead and call to order the Board of Supervisors meeting for August 6th. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and we'll go to the manager for announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to members of the board, staff, and the public for joining us this evening for the August 6th Board of Supervisors regular meeting. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and in person here in the main meeting room. If you are in attendance virtually using the WebEx platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls on you. If you are attending in person with us in the main meeting room and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please address the board at the podium, state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public attending using the WebEx platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. And finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all can hear and interact using the WebEx platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Strickland? Here. Ms. Stevens? Here. Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Patterson?
Here.
Mr. Heller?
Here.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And I'll also announce at this time that we had executive sessions on real estate and personnel matters on July 19th and this evening, August 6th. So we will move to public input. If there's any member of the public who has comments to share on anything not on tonight's agenda, we'll look in the room here first. Not seeing any, and we will look online. You can raise your digital hand. Not seeing any there. So we will move on. Up next is approval of the minutes, and this is the minutes from the July 16th board meeting. Were there any changes or corrections to those? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Sorry.
This is Matt, so moved.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say no. All right, thank you. We'll go to authorities, boards, and commissions reports. And this evening, we have the SCLO Library Board report with Patricia Best. If you want to come on up to the podium, I know your report was attached, but if you have anything you want to highlight and share with us, we invite you to do so.
It's my pleasure to share this brief report with you tonight, and it's always nice when you can bring good news to a group. You've had a chance to read the report, but just for those listening who perhaps haven't seen the whole packet, I'll just highlight a few of the things from the report as well. I understand that it's usually customary to begin these reports with a little bit of a swath about the usage by our Ferguson Township residents. And so the library usage from January 1st through June 30th of this year for Ferguson Township residents, they checked out 70,521 physical items. And once again, the physical materials checked out by Ferguson Township residents is the most of any of the participating townships in COG. This calculates mathematically to 29.88%, almost 30% of the total usage during this period. The other part that you had in your report talks about the remote usage, and that also has continued to be strong in terms of being able to drop items off. 14,000 items were dropped at the center at Northland, and 1,900 items were dropped off in Pine Grove North, so those continue to be of use to the residents. I'll just highlight briefly the 4 things that were mentioned in your report. The first one is just a a nice thing too, if you have been in the library or can be in the library in the next week or two. Every summer, the library invites children, elementary school children, to provide artwork, and that's displayed in the Children's Services Department. And right now, there is a wonderful, amazing dragon flying over the play area that was created by the Park Forest Elementary School students. And appropriately so, there are lovely, colorful bugs and butterflies attached to all the windows in that area as well, so providing a nice summery background. They asked the children to think about the summer reading theme, which this year was Adventure Begins in Your Library. So that was what they put together. Back to a few numbers in terms of the second highlight about summer reading at SCLO. One of the wonderful things about it is we're talking about babies through adults in terms of participation in the summer reading program as well. So far, 108 babies and toddlers, 1,562 children ages 3 to 12, 302 teens, and 447 adults are taking part in this. The Children's Service Department is doing 64 programs during the summer, and participation in that has been 4,440 people. So it continues to be very good news and a strong rebound after COVID of people appreciating and being able to come out and be part of the library in person. The other thing that happened as part of that summer reading program that is the first, there were 2 week-long camps for students. The first one for teenagers. The first one was about video gaming and doing design, not playing them, but designing them or creating them. And the second one was going back to old school, designing card games or board games. And the true test of whether we hit the mark with these, a number of the students asked if there could be more of these offered during the summer as well. So hopefully that'll be something we can do in the future as well. And thirdly, it was a nice activity on July 20th where the Children's Services Department partnered with staff of Alpha Fire Company to celebrate their 125th anniversary. You might remember that celebration was on Allen Street right outside of SCLO. So a number of the staff members then, we had a children's and family activity and came in and the firefighters read stories to the children, and Paula Bannon, who's the head of Children's Services, led songs and rhymes, and the families had a chance to create out of a paper bag a firefighter puppet that they could then take home. So it was a lovely way to bring the celebration into the library for families and to round out that day as well. And we wanted to send a big thank you to 2 firefighters, Carmine Prestia and Sarah Collett, and fire police officer Susan Vinigoni, who were the readers for the children as well. And finally and lastly, it's always nice to report grants that come in and help us to add resources for people to use. And so we had a generous grant from the Hamer Foundation, and SCLO Library has so far received over 100 new children's and teen books and over 200 new e-books and digital audio books for children, teens, and adults. And this grant supports summer reading across all 7 district libraries in the 4 counties, and SCLO is fortunate to be part of that grant as well. They've also included titles of new titles in the popular book discussion kits that a number of book clubs in the community have taken advantage of as well. And it also has funded the new, very popular no-wait titles on the digital library as well for every week of summer reading. So, I know you had a chance to read that, but it's always good to reiterate good news, and I'm very happy to have been able to share a very busy and productive summer with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We love hearing those updates about, especially about summer reading, because I know everyone gets excited about that. So, are there any questions?
Just a comment again. I always appreciate summer reading and the outreach with the 125th, everything going on there. And I've also heard a challenge. If we're at 29.88, maybe we can hit 30% of the volume coming out of the library here next time. So that's a goal.
I like that.
But I think if you include the electronic, we probably are well over that, because I'm an e-user,
Yes.
so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're probably right. It'd be interesting to gather that data and feed that in, and sort that out. So
Great.
I'll take that back.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much
You're
again.
quite welcome.
Okay, we'll move to special reports and acknowledgements under our diversity, equity, and inclusionary activities and acknowledgements calendar. This is Black August month for this month. We'll move to presentation on the final design of pollutant reduction project for Beaver Branch Tributary, and I believe that will be Ron Seibert. Thank you.
Adam's even taller than I, and he's going to use this thing too. So you may recall we were here, I think it was in June, gave an overview of the stormwater management program, said we'd be back. We didn't kid, we're here. So again, Adam Willis is the new stormwater engineer. Earlier this evening, we had an open house for the Beaver Branch project. There are still some of the boards over here that were used for that. We'll touch on some of those in this presentation tonight as well. Adam's going to do the bulk of the presentation for this, but I just wanted to summarize briefly for the open house. We did have one couple that came out of the 6 that were invited, Mike and Annette Hampton. Had good discussion with them, good conversations. Some things we want to work out with them on plantings. She's got some allergies, and so we're going to work with them the best we can within the project to meet their needs they have as an adjoiner as well. I'm going to let Adam kind of go through the presentation, but I'll be here as well to answer questions.
Thank you. As Ron said, happy to be the new stormwater engineer, and we've gotten the results in Beaver Branch in there at 90% design from our consultant, who is also on if we have any additional questions afterwards. This is, I know in the past we've had some questions, so just a brief overview of the project. The Beaver Branch is, due to that being a separate watershed, so this is the PRP project that we have to do on our own. It's not related to either the Millbrook Marsh or they've been mentioned, or the one that we're buying into at the Penn State Duck Pond. Just kind of further demonstrating that, a little bit of the divide. We're obviously in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. This is the approximate project location that we're settled on below Wyoming, between Wyoming and Kansas Avenue. It's about 350 linear feet. Below that is a former U.S. Fish and Wildlife stream restoration project. So we'd be going from approximately the edge of the tree line there to the culvert under the township road. And just a little farther, the red lines on these, and they are available on those maps, represent the proposed easements. The initial easement in the area was not sufficient. That had existed long demanding presentation. So towards the south, we'll be looking at some additional easement acquisition for that to satisfy the riparian buffer zones. The general design of it starts at a plunge pool and works by increasing the channel sinuosity and armoring the outer edges of the banks to create channel stability. Of note also is there's some existing flooding in homes' backyards above and below and around this section of channel. According to our design reports and from the consultant, all flooding should be contained within this project when it is complete, and it will satisfy our PRP requirements for this with additional extra credit that we may or may not be able to use in future cycles. We don't have information from DEP to speak definitively on that either way. This was one of our renderings from 70%, just a little more artistic, includes a cross section there with a low channel and similar for some increased floodplain and riparian buffers. And this kind of goes over the easements. On here, of note, the green easement that there is the original easement the township has from the initial subdivision construction. Through there, along the lower line, you'll see the yellow, orange, and the light blue and orange again are permanent easements for the project. All of the additional, and Ron has a laser pointer, which would be very helpful. So, now Ron, I just saw you use it. Okay. So this was the original subdivision easement. This gray one here will be a temporary easement, as well as the magenta color here, this sliver and this red are all temporary easements for construction, with these comprising the bulk of the permanent easement acquisition in this area. Of note, this particular parcel right here, I believe according to Ron, is deeded to the original developers. So it's going to be a bit of a unique situation there. So.
Yeah, I'll just speak to that briefly. It's one of those ones when the development was done, it was right at a phase line between the two different sections, and it never got platted within a lot that was transferred. So there's a section of land in there that's still owned by the original developer, so we'll be dealing with either them or their heir successors and assigns. Not so different from what we did when we did the Whitehall Road widening project, and we ran a pipe down Spruce and Fir, where we had to work with the heir successor and assign to get that drainage easement. So a little unique in that regard, but that's the right way to do it.
And we're anticipating construction cost at $275,000 to date. Conservatively, I believe the original budgeted was $350,000, so we're refining that a little from that point. Also anticipate easement costs were $75,000. And pending board approval, the project timeline would be a permit submission later this month and approximately a 9-month DEP review time, at which time we would look to begin project bidding pending the permit approval, and with hopefully a construction start summer of 2025 and completion 2025 if timelines hold and contractor availability. So from that, I guess I will put it out for any questions. Obviously, we do have the materials blown up over there, if anybody.
Well, thanks so much, and it's great to meet you this evening, Adam. Thanks for coming and presenting that. Questions on this? We can start over here.
I guess my question is really about the timeline. It's great, the cost, et cetera, but again, when I think about, all right, we're talking late spring, but more like summer if we put that 9-month timeline out there. So any issues with that from the township's perspective? Is if this timeline doesn't hold, or is it a couple months maybe either way?
So, do you want to handle that, Ron? Or, I will be honest, the PRP project it should be slated to be completed by the end of our permit cycle at the end of next year. In the past, we haven't observed a problem if it slips, just based on some of my previous experience with DEP, but obviously we can't speak to that. But with the review timeline, kind of the best we can hope is to move at this point and hope that that we have an expedient review. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, Ron.
No, I'd say that's a pretty good summary right there. The construction timeline, the window really works out well for when we want to try to work within the stream because the base flow is the lowest. Right, so in the summer months, in the spring it continues to run, but in the summer is when we have the least. It's more, respondent to rain events. We don't have a lot of base flow in it, so that's a good time of year for us to be in the waterway working. Adam's right. We may or may not hit the actual deadline under MS4 permit to have it constructed. Feel pretty sure that we'll have it completed in time for our annual report, which is due in September. So, and I think of all the MS4 projects that are out there, we're in that group of people that are probably pretty close to meeting the timeline, and there are others that haven't even thought about what they're going to do yet. So if there would be enforcement action by the department, is less likely it would be towards those people that are actually working towards getting a project completed in that.
Answer my question perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Anticipated easement cost, what's that number based upon?
So the easement acquisition is going to involve compensating the property owners for acquiring the use of their properties. Part of that would be the cost for an appraiser to value the land, a legal to help us with the recording of the easement, doing the easement agreement, and then also compensating them for the actual appraised value of it. To use comps for that, we went back to the Park Hills Drainage Way project, again in a residential neighborhood where we had to acquire temporary and permanent easements, and then use that to come up with that budgetary estimate. The appraisals will actually inform that actual value for the value that gets offered to the property owners. Both the anticipated construction cost and the anticipated easement cost are less than what is in the budget, either this year's operating budget or next year's, what's in the 5-year CIP that would roll into next year's construction costs. So at this point, at 90%, we're feeling pretty good where we are budget-wise on the project.
And the easement acquisition will be presented to the board in the form of a resolution at a future meeting, so it'll be back in front of you with
Correct.
Actual dollar amounts.
As well as once we get to the bidding phase, of course, the project will come back to the Board of Supervisors toward that construction contract too.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? All right.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much. Appreciate your time on that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we will move to the stormwater management presentation, which will also be presented by the township engineer, Ron Seibert, and stormwater engineer, Adam Wallace.
Go very far.
No.
So I'm going to point out, in your agenda, there are 2 items that relate to this. This is where the presentation part is, but I think when the agenda packet was built, all of the documents that we're going to refer to are actually under action item number 11 for new
Right.
business. So look there for, if you haven't already, the ordinance amendment language in the memo that Adam and I are going to be walking through. Okay, so again, I'm going to kind of introduce, so like I did all the talking in June and Adam got to sit and watch. We're just flipping roles here. So, and unfortunately, Sam, who was our summer helper, I don't think he made it this evening, so he wasn't feeling good this week, who helped do a lot of the work on this. He was going to be here too, so you could reintroduce him, but he didn't make it. So just real quick, brief intro for this one before Adam takes the reins and gets going. This is essentially not what we had talked about, doing a whole comprehensive rewrite of the ordinance, having some working groups, people come in to see what's good, what's bad. Really, the focus of this ordinance amendment is to get us into compliance with the DEP model ordinance that's required by our MS4 permit. So these are just, we'll call them minor in that context. There's no major things. There'll be some things that look different or look new. A lot of it is reorganization, but there's really just minor things in this one that are going to be discussed. So again, we're looking at, the reason for this is updating it to be consistent with that requirement in our MS4 permit. And then we have to have the ordinance adopted by September 30th this year. All of the other Center Region municipalities are doing the same thing, and we've been working with them to try to have some sense of consistency within the region still on how the sections of the model ordinance will be incorporated into our actual ordinance themselves. So we feel pretty confident that all the revisions you're going to see tonight are going to be able for us to say, yes, we comply with the DEP model ordinance. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Adam and I'll walk you through. There's been a memo in the packet that kind of spoke to each one point by point, and then also the Word version of the draft ordinance that we would then seek later on the agenda authorization to advertise that for a public hearing.
All right, thank you. I guess I'll start with the easier ones. There's a listing here and they're out of number only because we numbered the ordinances in the memo that we presented in the draft packet in the number they occur in the ordinance. These administrative revisions here are just that. Their first one is the addition of some definitions that were not in the previous one and that relate to additions, subtractions, and then the following 4 are actually just that. They are relocating one existing section of the ordinance and then renumbering an additional 3 for organizational reasons as we incorporate other items. So we don't really anticipate anything aside from changes with those. Our first revision that we found in the model ordinance to adopt the language relates to the stormwater exemptions, and it allows the township to grant or disallow an exemption based on public health and safety. We were adding this language based on its inclusion in the model ordinance, again, not changing the lists of exemptions that are present at this time in the ordinance. Similarly, next revision is a purely calculational revision. These are design storm frequencies that were required, that currently in the first line, the 1, 2, and 10, and 100 are required by our ordinance and most other center regions to be evaluated for peak rate discharge from the site. The state model ordinance changed that to frankly include all of the common model ordinance exemptions, but in our experience working with these in design software, it's not really a large calculational lift to do this for a permittee or submittee. And in fact, some of them, such as the 25-year and 50-year, were part of the state submission required depending on your NPDS as well. 6 and 9 are slightly larger change and result from water quality volume. So to begin with in that section, we basically changed 6 as adding language directing for a change in submission and volume calculation based on site disturbed size of the disturbed project. Under an acre, the Ferguson Township ordinance stays completely the same as it is adopted today. And over an acre, it directs them to either use a method that is called CG one that is part of the PADEP BMP manual and required on state submissions for MPDS permits. And while we are interpreting this as it requires them to adopt the greater volume requirement of the two, either the township's existing ordinance or the ordinance as prepared according to the methodology by DEP and brought into the ordinance. The reason that this change was necessary is our ordinance at less than an acre, generally, there's two methods, I guess I'll step back for the state. They would have what they call a CG 1 and 2. 2 is their simplified method that's less than 1 acre. We are generally more restrictive to that based on our Act 167 coming from that 2003 ordinance. Where we differ is when we get over the site of the acre in what they call their design storm method, CG1, can deliver more conservative numbers at times depending on sites and conditions. So we were adopting that to be consistent with them in computation methodology. The final revision 9 is where we bring in this methodology into the ordinance change. And for that, we're largely adopting it with two caveats. One is how we address existing impervious that may or may not be unpermitted from 2006. This was something that we've coordinated with other, or spoke about with other MS4 partners. And the other one are incorporating some existing portions of our ordinance as they relate to our karst geology so that they're taken into account with the volume calculations. And the next one is back to, I would say, slightly more administrative comment. There's a list of prohibited discharges that are allowed by our MS4 permit into our storm sewer system. There are some slight revisions from that from the state. Of note, swimming pool discharges are no longer allowed to be discharged into that, dechlorinated or otherwise, and they added non-contaminated to a lot of existing discharges. Previously in our ordinance, we had a lot of the state's requirements listed as individual items where the state had them consolidated, so we chose just to adopt the state's language verbatim in that rather than our existing. And do you have anything?
Nope, go ahead.
The next one, as part of the state's ordinance, was a model ordinance, was requiring a 45-day review time from the submission of a completed stormwater management plan or a revision to a completed stormwater management plan, depending on a comment letters or addresses. So we added language to support that. The final revision is one that currently under the ordinance, all owners that have a occupied BMP are required to maintain records at their request of the town for records of inspection for their stormwater BMPs to be presented at request of the township. The model ordinances are language has changed to say that we would like it to be submitted annually, and we adopted that change into this language. I'll kick it to Ron a little bit on this.
Yeah, so this isn't something that we really wanted to do, but it's in the model ordinance, so to be compliant, we need to do that. So as Adam mentioned in the past, the ordinance require the property owners to do the inspections and maintain those records themselves. And if we needed them, we would request them from them. We've never, in my history, we've never requested them. So the ordinance now is gonna say they have to do the inspections and annually provide them to us. So we got it in the language, it's in the ordinance, we're gonna say we comply. We're gonna kind of roll this in through a little bit of a gradual approach with the property owners. We're not looking to enforce the first year. If you don't get them, we're just gonna do a lot of education first, encourage people to do that, and try to get them into a rhythm of submitting them. There's been some conversation with other municipalities in the center region to see if there's a way we can do that, simplify it for them, that they can meet that reporting requirement by doing it online with a survey 123 form that we can create, that they can go in, check some boxes, have some standard language, and then submit that to us electronically. That's kind of in the works. I don't know for sure if we'll get there, how soon we'll get there, but that's kind of our approach that we're gonna look at with this one.
And last, but I guess probably least, we were revising one of our appendix. This is not related to the model ordinance, but we're adding some labels to address some common questions. Not really changing any substance, but other than taking this opportunity to add labels to an existing map. So I guess with that, I'll turn it over to move forward.
All right.
And let me just get one clarification, because it might have been confusing on the slide where we talked about prohibited discharges. The list of items that we tweaked and reorganized to be consistent with the DEP model ordinance are actually the allowable discharges that are under the prohibited discharges section of the ordinance. So if you're reading those, you're thinking, well, why would you prohibit that? No, those are actually the allowable ones. So it might have been a little confusing, actually, when I looked at the slide, came up like, oh, no, okay, I get it. So-
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, any questions you all have on that?
All right, thanks. Questions over here first? Not seeing anything.
My questions were related to the 705B Rev 13 change that was noted. And yeah, I guess this is a good time to ask. If it's not, we can delay it. But I'm just curious, what happens? Are we now the custodians of those reports, and are we then audited by folks or by a separate entity to see how we're keeping those documents and how we're using them in our processes behind the scenes?
So, yeah, so once they submit them to us, we'll have to maintain those records. They'll be scanned in, archived. DEP does an annual inspection of the township to come in and look to see how we're doing with our, we'll go through a walkthrough of our annual report. So they can request to see those records. How we would use them internally is we'll just check to make sure people are actually understanding their BMPs and what they're supposed to be doing. And if they're not maintaining them properly, then we'll do follow-up with the property owners to help them understand what they should be doing. If we don't have those records and DEP comes in and does an inspection, that could be a finding in the inspection. And we've had findings before, and we continually improve.
And I think that's my next question is, if there is a fine, with the idea of slowly bringing this out to the public, et cetera, is there any potential for findings that we are doing kind of a slow start on this or a soft start?
No, I mean, our experience has been in the past with DEP, with the people that come and do inspections, actually appreciate that method because we take credit for it under public education as well. So we're really helping the people understand what they're supposed to be doing as opposed to go out. It's using the carrot instead of the stick.
Yeah.
And so, or at least our region of DEP, that has been historically in the past what they like to see. So even for people that have had, maybe had a illicit discharge, you know, somebody dumped something down the curb line that they shouldn't have. Our first approach is educate them on what they did and why they shouldn't do it anymore. And then if it continues, then we'll escalate that under the allowable enforcement provisions of the ordinance.
Great, and then just for clarification, CG2 is less than 1 acre and CG1 is greater than 1 acre. That just seems backwards to me. It's like, okay. Who comes up with this stuff? But I'm good. That was my only question related again to 705B. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll just maybe add to 705B question. So someone's going to audit, maybe kind of take a look, kick the tires. Is there any, I guess, should we have been doing this ourselves, like requiring the owners to provide some data to show that they're doing it?
In the past, that's not been a requirement. In the past, we put that on the property owner to do the inspections and maintain the records themselves. It's never been a requirement that they submit them to us unless we request them. And we've never really had a cause to do that. So in the past, no, we don't have anything where we're gonna fail an inspection. We've had, like I said, we've had annual inspections from DEP ever since we've had an MS4 permit that I've been on staff. So I don't think there's anything in the past that is bad that we need to try to go back and correct. I think from this point moving forward, we're gonna help the people that own these basins understand the requirements. And we tried to do a better job of that even over the past couple of years when we have our pre-construction meetings after the plan's approved and they start construction. We're trying to make sure that the owner is there at the table too, not just the contractor who's building it. So the owner's aware of what's getting built and what their responsibilities are when it's done. So we're trying to do a better job of educating folks on what they're supposed to be doing. Sometimes it works. Other times we'll do BMP inspections and we shake our head and think, okay, they just really don't get it. So again, we'll be doing more education with that type of stuff when we write our notices of violation for folks. Just because somebody's in violation doesn't mean they're gonna get a fine, right? You missed the mark, well, we're gonna help you get back on track. If you continue to miss the mark for whatever reason, you can't get back on track, then we may have to go to, the fine, the enforcement part of it that way.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I understand. And
Sure.
it'll be good to maybe have we thought about implementation of
Well,
this?
yeah, so I
You
think
said-
what we're probably gonna see in some upcoming newsletter article is some of the things we worked into the ordinance through the compliance requirement for MS4 permit to start add some of that public education part. We've done a lot in the past with illicit discharges, because that is something that really applies to all residents. The stuff with the BMPs is more of a targeted thing. So we may do like an online article. We'll probably start doing some targeted mailings to those individuals that are responsible for, the maintenance of those BMPs.
Copy that, thank you. And then, there was one about 45 days as far as a plan review. What was the number before?
There was none.
No.
So the only time it would kick in would be when the stormwater plan is submitted consistent with the subdivision and land development ordinance. We would follow the timelines in the NPC for making sure that the reviews were done. But if there was a plan that was submitted separate from a subdivision or land development, the ordinance had no time limitation in it. Yeah.
And is this 45 days in conflict with anything I think we have a,
No, it wouldn't
Planning
be.
document.
And typically we get them done quicker than that. Yeah.
okay. So it's just more of a formality, matching the
And again, it's
language. We're
stuff that
better
we
than
have to do
this.
to comply with the DEP model ordinance to put that language in there.
Okay.
We could be more restrictive than that, but we just left it at the 45 days.
We needed to have a number because we didn't have one before.
Exactly,
Copy that.
yeah. We want to be able to say when we submit our annual report that our updated ordinance complies with the DEP model ordinance.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Okay, we will, sure, if you want to come on up and provide your name and township of residence.
Yeah.
Bill Keough, Township resident. Just a couple of questions about the annual reporting function. How many, what's an estimate of how many people, how many entities will fall under that starting the adoption of this change?
Do you remember how many BMPs? Oh, no, so, okay. So I think we have about 140 BMPs, but there's not that many properties that are involved. I don't remember off the top of my head how many property owners that would associate with, but it's probably in the, don't hold me to this, but it's probably around 60 or 70 properties in the township that have these regulated BMPs.
Okay.
That sound about right?
I would say that's probably accurate, and
Yeah.
obviously there might be some that are even similar owners between that, so
Sure.
the number of actual owners might go down.
With the reporting requirement, will it require a professional to submit the documentation?
No.
It will not. When you say a landowner, we're talking about people like me? I mean, I'm a landowner.
So if.
I'm not,
He can respond to that, because
Just-
it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
just real quick clarify, it would be only those property owners that have done a project that required the construction of a stormwater BMP. So it's gonna be more like developments, like here Ferguson Township zoning, we've got BMPs because we have impervious areas. Typical single-family residents, farmers don't have BMPs, they don't have that requirement for reporting of the maintenance on the BMPs. It would be more the larger developments.
Or
the commercial
HOA.
developments.
HOA.
Yeah.
Northland Center, homeowners associations for larger developments, that type of stuff.
when you get this documentation annually, it becomes an official record of the township?
Correct.
Are we going to need to hire somebody to manage that?
We already have them.
Okay. I'm just concerned, I think about, I sit on the planning commission, so that when we have businesses coming forward for land development plans, is this another barrier or not?
Well, and I'll just say that, we're trying to meet what we're required to meet, so.
I understand that,
just
and
to
there are
keep-
multiple ways of doing that. This is only one way of doing that, I suspect.
And go ahead, I'll look to the manager and if the staff cares to respond, but.
We are required by
Yeah.
state regulations to meet these
these legislative mandates. And the model ordinance is just an easy pathway for our staff to be able to implement into our ordinances.
It would be my hope that all 6 municipalities will have the same document, you know.
Yeah.
Because the developers just get into such a quagmire
Yep.
of who requires what
Yep.
in the different municipalities.
So throughout, what we've done was the recommended changes to the ordinance to comply with the DEP model ordinance has not been done in a vacuum.
Okay.
Adam and I met with the other engineers from the center region, and we even used our intern that we had to help those other municipalities understand the changes and how they would get related into their ordinance. And again, since we all came from the same model ordinance, the 167 ordinance that was adopted, the ordinances are already pretty similar in that regard. Granted, Ferguson has a few more provisions that were put in there as a result of some of our karst geology that we have up here and some of the things that were desired when the cottages was built. But outside of that, the ordinances are all pretty similar, and there seems to be a good working relationship within that group of engineers. So I'm hoping that even some of the things that we're gonna try to steer towards for the annual reporting requirements on BMP maintenance, again, are as simple and easy to be done as possible, like I mentioned with that online reporting form. So it's not hard for them to do, but it allows us to say, yes, we have received the maintenance records from the property owner.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you both very much, and we'll be looking at this later on in the
Okay,
meeting.
thank you.
Okay, we will move to COG and Regional Committee reports. Up first is COG Committee reports. Parks and Recreation Governance, looks like it was canceled. Lucy Committee was canceled. Facilities Committee. There is a
Facilities
report.
Committee did meet this morning. A couple of key items from that meeting. Number one, there was a HVAC updated report that came out to kind of just talk through options there, and we're going to see some cost earlier than later with one of the units doesn't even work of the kitchen, so we're going to have to replace that immediately. And then we're just now looking. Recommendation was to have that consultant think outside the box a little bit, because there's some of these massive units in the attic that will require removing the roof to get to them, to remove them. And so I think the question then becomes, do we really need to do that? Or do we wait until the roof needs to be replaced? And so then you don't have to, it's going to happen anyways. Take the plywood off at that time. So they're thinking through that, and maybe just use a fan. Like, we don't need it to be 68 degrees in, certain parts of the building. So they're thinking through that. No, that was the recommendation, to think through that. Number two, there are cleaning services that are being done by different entities within COG, and so they're looking to consolidate that work. And so then and it may become a full-time position. They're still thinking through all that, but they just want to kind of give an update there. But we are on the hunt to cease using different services for different entities at different prices and different schedules, such that it's not efficient and it's taking more money than it should. Those are the two main items, and I'll conclude.
All
Questions?
right. Questions on facilities? Yes.
I did. So in the program plan, they kept referencing a facilities assessment. Who's doing that?
There'll be a consultant doing it. They're working on it right now. I think we approved that 2 meetings ago. It may have gone to general forum for that. So there's a consultant that's starting the process to do that, and the new executive director will be working with them on that plan. It's really about there's a site up on College Township. There's the building there right around the corner, and some needs for Millbrook Marsh staff. And so looking at all of those things and saying, okay, let's get like a comprehensive plan around what facilities are going to be for all those things that meet the needs, and are we going to do it here, are we going to do it somewhere else, kind of that analysis.
Okay, thanks.
I do like the idea of the evaluation of more in-house cleaning versus contracted cleaning. in my experience, a lot of contracted cleaning services, it's sometimes challenging for them to sometimes find staff. As a matter of fact, I was actually in a store one evening. Their cleaning person drove the whole way from Philadelphia to State College because they did not have anyone in the area that was available to clean the store.
Oh, my.
Nothing else? All right, that's been a long discussion on the custodial services, so I'm glad something's moving forward. I know some of the complications were that we have varied locations, so it's, maybe there was some efficiency in some places to have an off-site or a contracted service, but I'm glad somebody's reviewing it, so that's good.
If there's an opportunity for Ferguson to participate, we may want to kind of toss that out there as well to say, well, look, we've got XYZ thing that we're doing, and if this will help to make it worth the while to fund a full-time person, it might be of benefit to the township.
And there's been some collaboration there in the past. They probably brought that up. All right, so nothing else on facilities. It looks like human resources was also canceled.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we will move to other committee reports. And this evening we have our Spring Creek Watershed Commission report with Kevin Abbey, and I see Elise Johnson is also on the screen. Welcome to you both. Kevin, I think you may be muted, maybe not. Let's see. Oh, we cannot hear Elise either. We're working on that.
audio?
I can hear Kevin and Elise.
So it's us.
Okay,
All right, we can hear. Okay, Kevin, you're coming in a little bit now.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
For the Watershed Commission, coordinating with staff, there are two meeting reports in front of you tonight. As you may recall, the Watershed Commission meets the third Wednesday of odd-numbered months for a total of 6 meetings a year. So in front of you is the May 15 and the July 17 reports. Just a couple things that I would note. Education speaking in May, at the May 15th meeting, we had a presentation about a pretty interesting student project at Penn State with regard to lawn to habitat conversion, and linkage to that report or to the work they've done is in my report. And I would also point out at the May meeting, the commission authorized us to submit an application to the Pennsylvania Mountain Service Corps for AmeriCorps members to join the work of the commission in the 2024-2025. It's almost the academic year. And there's also a finance report. So if you have any questions about any of that from May, we can go through that. In July, finance report is there. I would make note for folks that at the time of the report, even though we didn't have the statement from Converge, we had received all the municipal contributions from all 11 members for the current year, 2024. So that is mentioned there. In the July old business, we had received successful approval of our AmeriCorps application, and so the Watershed Commission accepted Elise as a returning AmeriCorps member for her 1,700-hour commitment over the, again, 24-25 timeline. And we added a 675-hour, approximately part-time position that is focused on the Atlas project. And Caitlin Dooley, a Penn State senior, has agreed to work with us and AmeriCorps on that position. Any questions about May or July?
All right, thank you so much. Questions? Let me start over here. If there's nothing. Nothing. No questions. Just thank you both so much. Elise did give a great presentation with really good information on AmeriCorps at that July meeting, so appreciated that. And glad that you're staying. So that's all good news. So happy about that.
If I might, Madam Chair, one last thing.
Yes.
I'd like to draw the board's attention. We had a end of June presentation on June 26th from a hydrologist from the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, Graham Markowitz. And in the report, you can see the linkage to Graham's presentation. It was very interesting, and we're trying to wrap our minds around and probably will need to sit down with Elise and Adam and Centrise and other staff, Ron, David, about some of the components in that presentation that wherein SRBC has identified optimum locations for groundwater recharge and critical aquifer recharge. And it's worth taking a look at. The maps are positive. Adam and Karina and Elise and I were at the June 26th meeting, and it has quite a bit of potential for looking at the groundwater recharge combined with the geology and habitat of portions of Ferguson Township.
Great, thank you.
That's my report. Thanks for your patience. Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much, and I'll just say there is a lot of information on the Spring Creek Watershed Commission website. Lots of interesting reports and resources, so yeah, I'd encourage anyone to go and check that out. So there's a lot to discover on there. All right, well, thank you both.
All right.
Appreciate it. Okay, we will move to staff reports, and we have the manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just provide a verbal update here. Last week, I attended a presentation from the Center County Hazard Mitigation Plan Ad Hoc Steering Committee, and I just want to bring attention that there will be information circulated on our website as well as in our e-newsletter. Currently, that Ad Hoc Steering Committee is soliciting input from the community via a survey, and so information will be posted on our website this week, and residents are encouraged to participate and provide input. I also bring attention to the comprehensive plan update. There's also a survey that's being circulated and various engagement activities, and so residents that would like to provide feedback, I understand that the Center Region Planning Agency is soliciting that input at various community engagement events, as well as in the form of a survey that is also provided on our website. On July 31st, the township held a municipal mixer. It was the second time we held that, and it was held at Suburban Park, which was recently had some park improvements, and it was quite a success. And so many thanks to all the residents that took time to come out and engage and learn a little bit about municipal services and the various ways that they can provide support to the municipality and learn more about ways to get engaged. We had staff that attended AmeriCorps training as well, as Mr. Abbey just commented that they were awarded that AmeriCorps position, so it was Ferguson Township, and so there's mandated training, and we look forward to onboarding. We look forward to onboarding someone to be in that position. And then I'll end on just an update that myself, as well as managers represented in Harris, Patton, in College Township attended a meeting at Old Main with the Governmental Affairs and Community Relations Office to discuss coordination and collaboration efforts as it relates to what we'll soon hear as the start of a new fall semester, football games and various other activities that involves a great deal of collaboration between the municipalities and Penn State, including ours. So with that, I'll conclude my report. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for the manager? Not seeing anything.
Just a comment, enjoyed the municipal mixer. I thought seeing all the residents out there, equipment and things that we're using at the township in use, as well as some of the supervisors taking advantage of the bucket truck and having rides. I thought it was awesome, so.
Great,
well
good
done.
to hear. Yeah. And a big shout out to staff. It took a lot of interdepartmental coordination and collaboration on that front as well. And so many thanks to all the staff involved.
Yeah, I really can't say enough about the municipal mixer. It was so good. I mean, it was really like a celebratory party kind of atmosphere. A lot of staff came out, and there were a lot of residents. And I think there are probably even more people than last year's. And so I think it's a great activity. So I'm really appreciative to all the staff that coordinated that. There were food trucks. It was just a really neat event. So thanks again for putting that all together. All right, okay, we'll move to unfinished business. And up first, we have a public hearing on an ordinance of the Township of Ferguson Center County, Pennsylvania to amend Chapter 16, Parks and Recreation, Section 1, Regulated Uses to allow the pedestrian and cyclist to traverse pathways through public parks except for Tudick Park. We'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On May 8th, 2024, Patton Township Board of Supervisors authorized a similar ordinance amendment to the Parks Code of Patton Township, which effectively permitted the use of public pathways through the public parks for purpose of bicycle and similar vehicle traffic at night, and subsequently approached by the same individual, Mr. Cox, who did send an email, and I will forward it to the Board of Supervisors. He wanted to essentially say, thanks for considering this ordinance, and he had put together a presentation, and he had another commitment, and he was unable to attend the meeting, but he wanted to thank the Board of Supervisors for your consideration, and just acknowledge that this is, as part of a conversation that started many years ago, and actually came from Center Region Parks and Recreation, from the former director of CRPR, as a recommendation for the municipalities of COG to consider allowing bicyclists and pedestrians to traverse through the park at night. And I will note that in consultation with the solicitor, we did exclude Tudick Park as a result of the Tudick Park covenants and agreement between the township and the trust. Tudick Park actually has in its covenants that there's no night activity, and that is not considered to be a substantial change, given that we have advertised on our website and in our various advertisement with the amendment, the ordinance amendment being accessible and available for review, with the Tudick truck being removed. And so with that, this evening, I'll just note there is a recommended motion with the agenda, and this will be a roll call vote.
All right, thanks very much. And with that, I will open the public hearing for comments on this item. Not seeing any in the room or online. And with that, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Ms. Omar, I move that we adopt this ordinance amendment.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, discussion on this item?
No, just that, I'm glad that we do this, because particularly in Suburban Park, it's where the spin bikes go. So a lot of the residents at Vibro Apartments go into the park to drop off the bike and then walk across the street, so, great.
Okay.
As I've been taking my evening walks, I have not been going through the park near my home, and so I'll soon be allowed to.
There you go.
More direct route,
Very
perhaps.
good.
Patty had mentioned about the bikes, and I just thought about it, over at Tudick Park, at the dog parking lot, there are spin bikes, so I don't know, would we be restricting that, or? Guess nothing hurts if somebody's just gets a bike and gets right out.
You would not be able to, so
So
with the
you
exclusion of Tudick Park, there would not be it would not be permissive for individuals to traverse in the park pathways at night, whether it be on a bike or on foot.
It doesn't change anything
In
that's
Tudick
existing
Park.
at this
Correct.
point, yeah, it doesn't.
Right, so Ferguson Township just doesn't have the authority to make that decision.
And just, remember, sometimes they do park bikes right there in the parking lot, so.
Right. Yeah.
All right, if there's no other comment, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for ordinance amendment, or ordinance number 1098. Ms. Stevens?
Yes?
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Thank you. And roll call vote passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will move on to a public hearing on an ordinance of the Township of Ferguson Center, County, Pennsylvania to amend parking regulations on East Pine Grove Road. And for that item, we will go to Public Works Director Dave Modricker, who is online.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Alrighty. Was it too loud?
We corrected it. It was on our end. We corrected it.
Okay.
Not your fault.
At a previous board meeting, I introduced this topic, and as a recap, Township received a complaint about inadequate sight distance when exiting a driveway on East Pine Grove Road. Staff conducted a sight distance study that indicated a number of parking stalls would need to be removed to allow adequate sight distance to pull out of the driveway. And a draft ordinance was prepared, and that is again included in your packet, as well as a diagram that shows where the proposed parking restrictions would be in force.
All right.
And that is my summary.
Thanks very much. All right, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing for comments on this item. If you could make your way to the podium, and please provide your name and township of residence
Right.
for the minutes.
I'm Ken Wasson. I live at 211 East Pine Grove Road. This is my son.
I'm Kenny Lawson, Jr., live at 217.
Yeah. And until, I don't want to eliminate parking since you guys painted the lines. The problem we have is when they painted the lines, they painted them right to the curb cut. I know there was some pictures sent to David. I don't know if you guys have those pictures. But the problem is when we're going west into town to go home, if there's a car parked at our driveway right at that curb cut, we can't turn in. Because what happened was when you put the lines in, now the people were forced, they're trying to stay in those designated spots. So it pushed them right up to the edge of the curb cuts. There's been just a handful of times that we can't see to get out. Most of the time for myself and him looking east is the two commercial businesses that are below us. And I'm not sure, but I think to the best of my knowledge, when those buildings were built, they needed to require off-street parking. I don't know if that's true anymore or not. I didn't look. The other thing is, you get up through town and the parking stalls really get sparse and few and far between. And from my understanding, they say because there's alleys. Well, unless the alley is abandoned beside my property, that's where Ward Alley comes up, and they got painted right to the curb cuts on that. So I don't want to have you put up no parking signs. I'd just like to get rid of the paint, is what caused the problem. I do like the lane marker on the right, because when people come up through town, a lot of them veer off. But the individual stalls is what caused our problem. And I've been there for 60 years. And we haven't had a problem. So, that's all I got to say.
All right, thank
If you
you.
get the pictures.
Thank
This is the public hearing, so let them finish their. All right. Thanks very much. Was there any other public comment? Seeing none, I will close the public comment and ask for a motion.
I, Mr. Thompson, will move that the Board of Supervisors adopt an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Part 4, General Parking Regulations, Section 403, Parking Prohibited at all times in certain locations.
Is there a second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
Okay, discussion on this item. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess I need some clarity. I thought there was a, so number one, there's a safety issue, and so we need to resolve the safety issue. But then I guess as it relates to this is more of an enforcement action, maybe necessary for the safety issue. So I need somebody to just clarify that for me, because I think that'll absolutely affect my vote here.
Mm-hmm. And we can go to the manager, and also if you'd prefer, we can go to Mr. Modricker, who's still online.
So I would just acknowledge that per the ordinance, the amendment is just to allow for that enforcement action to take place, right? And so there had been a study that had been done, and it was acknowledged that we needed to remove the line striping, given the results of the study and the concern for public safety. So this evening, the reason you have an ordinance amendment in front of you is to formalize the prohibition, which would then result in having signage and an enforcement. I'll look to the township engineer and or the director of public works, who is still with us, if he would like to elaborate further.
Yeah. Dave, did you want to comment
Yeah.
on that? Go ahead.
I don't know that I have that much to add, other than I think we're all probably familiar with the history, so we did not prohibit parking in the past, but we also, were asked to try to optimize parking and look at a line striping plan, which staff did, optimized parking, and then responded appropriately to a site distance complaint following established criteria.
Right, and I think from the information included in the agenda, we can see visually where the lines of site concerns were, so.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Am I hearing that we did make the line adjustments? That's all done now?
No, the spaces still exist where they were.
Formal action taken tonight will then lead to the removal of the line striping, the signage, and then that would support enforcement to ensure that there's not a line of sight concern.
Okay, let me ask the question in a different way. Do we need this to paint or unpaint?
Yes, that would be the procedure, yes.
Correct.
Okay, so I understand, well, at least I thought I heard it to be, maybe some solicitor help here, that it was more of an enforcement thing, that this language, like, because we're adding it to this section, it becomes like, hey, now no parking, I'm going to give you a ticket.
Any changes to a travel way, one side of street parking, no parking, has to be done by ordinance in order for you to then be able to enforce it.
So we had an ordinance to paint what we painted.
Yes, and we're now amending
Okay.
that based upon the study.
So now we need an ordinance to unpaint. But because I'm hearing what the people that live right there are saying. And I'm reacting to that. They're saying like, look, just remove the paint, we're good.
Now that we went and did the study, there's now an official record that shows there's a public safety concern. And so now the recommendation from staff following the results of that study is that the complaint is validated. There is a line of sight concern, therefore we cannot support having that line stripe to support that additional parking. Therefore, the amendment has to happen for then the line striping to be removed.
And no parking.
And have no
Please.
parking.
Yeah, I'll pause for
So
that here.
if that concludes that, we'll go to, yes.
Yeah, I think this is all related, so I just want to take a little bit of a pause for a moment. The write-up says 4 spaces, but then the image says 5, and I believe, knowing this site, that there are actually 5 spaces that are in question. 3 in front of 217 and 2 in front of 207. Is that a fair and
Yeah, I
factual
believe
statement?
that is correct, and the narrative was not revised to reflect that.
Perfect, again, just so we're all on the same page. With that being said, and I'd love to hear from the owners of the property, it seems as though, and if I understand the ordinances, the moment signs, or we'll say the lines are removed from the road, that no parking signs must go up. Is that a factual statement?
That is correct.
Okay, so with that being said and with that understood, is a proposal or maybe an amendment to the proposal, would it be to remove the 2 spots that are in front of 207 that may be causing the line of sight issues to the west, and leaving the 3 spots in front of 217? Is that more agreeable for the residents? I would welcome public comment or feedback on that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm just curious as to why we did this in the first place. You said it was for safety or to optimize parking, correct?
The study or?
Yeah, well, when we painted the parking stalls.
To paint the park, right, to
Yeah.
optimize parking originally, yes. And then when a complaint came in, Public Works. Sorry?
Feedback. It's feedback on the lines. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, then a study was done to evaluate the line of sight issues.
Yeah, like I said, we don't need no parking signs up there. We just need to move back from the curb cuts. Because if your driveway is only, I don't know, 8 or 10 foot wide, and you try to turn into your driveway, and you have a car right there, you can't make the turn. So if we can, like I said, I don't want to eliminate parking. I don't want no parking signs put up there. That's not an issue. We have off-street parking, so that's not going to affect me unless it's, company or neighbors or something to that effect. But I just said I've been there for 60 years, and this hasn't been a problem until we painted.
Thank you, thanks. Okay, let's go to this side. Were there any comments?
No, well, only that, so is it, I'm a little confused. Is it removing all of those 5 parking spaces? Couldn't you just reduce them and move them back? Right, exactly. Okay.
Yeah, that's a follow-up question here, so. Jeremy, anything before I?
Well, looking at this, I understand the needing enough of a turning radius to get in. Otherwise, I don't know. I think the only other option you have is to go into oncoming traffic just to make the turn, which we don't want to encourage. Kind of with Patty, isn't there, instead of eliminating this many parking spaces, is there any opportunity to possibly resize? You may even lose 1 or 2 spaces, but instead of being so aggressive, I almost see there might be opportunity to maybe retain a couple of those parking spaces, but still achieve that proper turning radius needed to get in and out.
And that's essentially my question, so I want to go back to staff and see what the potential there is.
I would suggest that if that is something that the board would like staff to do, it would be then we do another study just to see if that's a feasible option. I would suggest the board probably doesn't want to, enact an ordinance amendment without having the support of the professional staff that would support a reduced concern on public safety. So if that is if that is an assessment that you would like to have analyzed, that is something that we could refer back to staff and see if that's feasible. I would believe that if it was an option, it may have been presented as an option, but we can certainly refer that back to staff, to our engineers, to conduct the study to determine if that is a feasible option.
That's what I'm hearing from the majority is to reevaluate what can be left there, so.
What were the options? Were there options?
This was presented as the option.
Okay. Were there other options before the option?
Not presented
Okay.
because this was your option, But we can go and do and see if perhaps that is something that maybe was overseen.
Yeah, appreciate that. All right.
And then if I may, I believe then it would fall on the homeowner to potentially say, yes, I am good with spots being here, but because,
No, it would have to be, when they go out and do a line of sight, there's a calculation, and so as a township, as the governing body, we would have to follow the direction of our experts being in this particular case, our township engineers. So if they come back and they say, we conducted the study a second time with a specific focus on this, this suggestion or this idea, and perhaps there was an oversight in the first analysis, and they can acknowledge, yeah, we can reduce the elimination of a parking stall by 1. But alternatively, if your experts are saying this is a public safety issue, the governing body almost has to take action in that regard because it presents legal implications, unfortunately. And I understand that this is not an ideal situation to those that live in that area. So I do empathize with this situation and how that will impact those that are living there. But on the side of the governing body, I would say that we could refer this back to the engineers and ask them to do an alternative assessment with a focus on the request. But if it comes back as currently presented to you this evening, unless if the solicitor objects at this point in time, I won't yield to her and put her on the spot. But unless if she cuts me off in this moment, I'm going to say, yes, it's going to come back and the board will have to take action in accordance with what would be in the best interest of public safety.
Madam Solicitor, I'd like to put you on the spot.
Well, and I'll say this.
There you go.
Because Mr. Moderator's on the line and Mr. Cyber's here as well, but remember, this is also a PennDOT roadway, which means we're all bound by whatever PennDOT says in terms of site distances, in terms of sizes of parking spaces. And so every time you go through and space out a neighborhood, I think about the Ale House every time I say this, because if you remember the old days, there weren't spaces there, and now there is. You tend to, under the guidelines, and I'm gonna look at the engineers because they know them better, but under the guidelines, the space to us always seems larger than it needs to be. But that's because it's based upon a standard that thinks about the largest vehicle that might park there as opposed to the smallest vehicle that would park there. If we all drove those little Honda cars that might fit, you could probably put a lot of fits in these spaces, but somebody drives a slightly larger vehicle, an SUV, you need more space. So those are all standards that are in the book, and that's what they have to follow when they look at it.
Okay.
if I may, I believe in the past there was a difference between a public road entering another public road and an alley entering a public road versus a private driveway entering a public road. And I think, if I remember the discussion from the last time, you can go right up to the curb cuts of private roads, or I'm sorry, we'll say a private driveway, unless somebody says, I can't see, which is why we have spots that go directly up to private driveways, which means if we use that same litmus test here, we're probably going to eliminate 50% of the parking in Pine Grove Mills because all of these go up to residents' driveways.
If we got complaints on all of them, we would have to take action and do those studies.
So there is no difference between a private curb cut and a public road entering a public road.
I'm going to look to the township engineer to comment. Thank you.
There is a difference in how you evaluate a public street versus a private driveway, Matt, you're correct.
Can we expound on those differences, or I'm just curious?
So part of it relates to, for sight distance, the position of the vehicle and the size of the vehicle. For a public street, we look more towards, we also consider larger vehicles, school buses. The position of the driver is higher and set back farther. Those types of things that we wouldn't apply to a private driveway.
Okay.
The other thing we do for a public street, we make sure we meet those minimum safe stopping distances in both directions. We won't apply it to a private driveway unless we receive a complaint from that property owner that, hey, I can't see to get out of my driveway. This is a problem. It's not safe. Please take action.
I think that's what I was
So how you
looking for.
summarized it earlier is how we've been playing the game.
Thank you. So it sounds like this, having it go back to staff for that site adjustment, then maybe some discussion would be appropriate. I'd be good with that, and not passing this ordinance tonight.
Thank you, Ron. That's
I have
the sense of.
I have more. I'm just, do we want to end, or, I have more. I'm just, I want to just make sure. Thank you.
Mhm.
So understanding how we got here, and just, and then where we maybe want to be. We got here because someone gave some feedback and said, hey, I can't see. We went and did a study, and that study said, yeah, we're going to have to remove that parking based on some guidelines, which maybe we used the guideline in well, based on line of sight guideline to say, okay, we're going to remove it. And maybe we could have gone shorter, maybe we could have gone longer, but that was just the recommendation from the engineer. It sounds like there are some residents that are okay with parking, that parking in theory should be there. But we just need to kind of take it back a little bit so that people's bumpers aren't right up against where they're coming out of the driveway. Okay. So, Madam Solicitor, just put you on the spot here for just a second. Is there any liability to the township for not taking action today?
Well, that's a pretty broad term. I mean, you've been advised by a study that there's a potential safety issue. If somebody pulls out of that driveway and is in an accident, and it'll come down to a battle of experts to say, you guys were right to kind of pull back and reevaluate the situation, or you're gonna have somebody say, there was no other way to evaluate the situation and the result is the same. And I'm not saying you write the check only and there aren't other responsibilities, but I'm saying that one of the things that we have with sight distance is as soon as you've been told there's a problem, you're supposed to address it.
Within how many days?
Well,
Just for
as soon as
Before you
you're,
have an
as soon as you can practically do it, obviously, if you pass this tonight and you're out making the changes, you're doing it. If you sit on it or you choose not to do anything, which I know is probably what the residents want, it becomes down the road someone coming in and Monday morning quarterbacking and saying, but if you had done this, would you have had the same problem? And, you know, I don't wanna be sitting in front of a jury that's gonna have an expert up there that's gonna say, well, if they had striped this better, that guy wouldn't have pulled out, or the guy coming up the street would have been able to see them. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, I hate for that to happen, but that you've got, and I'm not putting words in the engineer's mouth, but this is a roadway that has a lot of traffic on it. Has a lot of traffic moving relatively quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing quick?
We'll finish this here thank you so much, though. We'll finish go around the board here, and then if there's additional public comment, we can take that, that's fine.
I think I have all I need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate all the comments and questions. And there's, this initial striping and lining of the spaces was done as a part of the Pine Grove Mills projects. And so in the future, one could conceivably come back and propose to relook at that. If this went forward, to come back and say, ask staff to go back and evaluate where could additional parking go in, so.
It's gonna cost, I mean, there's dollars associated with digging a hole, putting a sign there, ripping up some stripes and putting some new stripes. There's dollars to do that, dollars to redo it. So, I mean, there's kind of like a do it once. Is there a put it in place, put a sign up, or a couple of cones on each side saying kind of, we're gonna widen this, and then we come back and do another ordinance that says, well, that's not no parking anymore. Like, is there a way to do that? Cause I'm kind of inclined that we gotta do something from our solicitor just said, we don't wanna get in any litigation
Been
because
presented with the information now.
we got the feedback.
Yeah.
There's a sightline problem, we gotta fix it.
Yeah.
And so waiting any longer, I'm just inclined to say, we gotta get this done so we don't put the township in any position But on the flip side, is there something that we can do today to guarantee that we can come back with a different ordinance that has a different expertise, that maybe shorten it, maybe do something different? But in the interim, there's just a couple of signs that reduces it, a couple of cones, whatever we can do without, at minimal cost. You know, just some, again, like just blocking off cones that gets the additional width, that better sight line starting tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Possibly. I mean, this would affect what staff is instructed to do. So if this was passed, then they would be removing the striping and posting the signs. There wouldn't be anything preventing a board member from coming back and submitting a board discussion item to the consent agenda to say, I'd like to discuss a reevaluation of parking in this area, is what
What's the work plan on getting this done? How long would it take to restripe and put a pole in for the signs that said no parking?
I mean, we would work.
Well, if the ordinance is passed, we would put a work order in, and installation of the signs, as long as we have the materials, is relatively quick. I could yield to Ron to see when our contractor can come back in town to do the eradication of the lines. That we'd have to get scheduled.
Yeah, the contractor would do the eradication. It would be the same contractor coming to town to do the remaining painting. So within a week or two likely, and if it would be delayed, there's always the option to rent the equipment and do it ourselves.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion? Any other comment from staff?
Recommendation is provided with the agenda.
Okay.
This is a
Any other
roll.
discussion on this end? Nothing else? Okay, and we have a motion and a second. If there's interest, I'll yield to the board. If there's interest in additional public comments, as the public comment period has been closed. But yes, if you want to come and share your additional comments, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Just one more thing you said about basically eliminating some parking. I don't know if you have the information in front of you seen, but if to the west of us, in my thought, there's a lot of additional spots up there that could be, taken in place of what we're losing down here, because once you get 4 or 5 houses above me, there's basically nothing. There's one here, one there. So and if you're going with the same thing off of private driveways versus the alleys, which are not township maintained, I don't know what your setback is or your sight line is difference between the alleys or the private drive. And so it seems like you used one set of standards on this end of town and then changed it on the upper end of town. So I think it needs to be, we can put more parking up there and take some off of us. And
Thank you.
But that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, if there's no other comment, again, we have a motion and a second.
I do want to comment one more time.
Yes.
This is a rock and a hard place situation in my mind. So, everybody's got their votes, but that's where I am right now. And so far as there's a safety concern that was mentioned, township, we don't want to get sued. I've been consistent about that. So we got to do what we got to do with what we have. I'm done.
Appreciate it, thank you. All right. Okay, good discussion, thank you, everyone. Okay, this is a roll call vote.
All right, Madam Chair, this is a roll call vote for ordinance number 1099. Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
No.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The vote passes 4-1.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. I appreciate all the public input as well. Okay, we will move to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson Center County, Pennsylvania, adopting the draft 2025 to 2029 capital improvement program, and we'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am arriving shortly at this agenda item. At the July 16th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors, the board authorized a public hearing on the 2025-2029 capital improvement plan. The CIP was presented to the Board of Supervisors at two public special meetings where the Assistant Township Manager led and facilitated those discussions, as well as a road tour with the Director of Public Works and the Assistant Manager. Changes that have been made by the board at the special meetings at the July 16th, were introduced at the July 16th, 2024 regular meeting and have been incorporated into the document. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the resolution advertised for public hearing for the board to take action this evening.
All right, thank you. And this too is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. Look in the room as well as online if there's any public comment on this item. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Ms. Amari, so moved. No, sorry, I moved to adopt the resolution for the 2025 to 2029 capital improvement program plan.
Thank you.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, thank you. Discussion on this item? Not seeing anything. All right, if there is no further discussion, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for Resolution 2024-17. Mr. Patterson?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. Vote passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will move to new business. Up first is the consent agenda. Did anyone need to remove any item for discussion? And if not, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
This is Matt, so moved.
Ms. Amari, second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing an amendment to the Articles of Agreement with SCLO Center Region Library.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda is a narrative that was included at the Center Region Council of Governments General Forum and committees, and previously discussed and approved throughout the COG committee process. And this evening, Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors is asked to take official action to enact the ordinance amendment. I'm provided with the agenda as a recommended motion.
All right, thank you. This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Ms. Amari, I move to adopt the resolution on the SCLO Library, Regional SCLO Center Region Library Articles of Agreement.
For a second.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, discussion on this item? Not seeing any. All right, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for Resolution 2024-18. Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Madam Chair, it passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will move to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, approving a settlement stipulation by and between Weiss Markets, Inc., Center County Board of Assessment Appeals, Center County, Ferguson Township, and State College Area School District to resolve a pending tax assessment appeal for tax parcel number 24-12-30, filed to Center County Civil Action 2023-1019. We'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda packet is a resolution to resolve a pending tax assessment appeal for the Weiss Market and Company property, tax parcel 24-0112-030-000, filed with Center County Civil Action 2023-2019. Provided with the agenda is a recommended motion.
All right, thank you. And this too is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Ms. Amari, I move to adopt the resolution.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for Resolution 2024-19. Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes?
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will move to review of the draft 2025 Center Region Council of Government Program Plan. With us this evening, we have Adam Brumbaugh, Interim Executive Director. And I'll ask if the manager has any introductory comments.
I will just share with the board that provided with the agenda packet is the comment matrix guide, and if the board would like to go through that guide, staff will take notes. Adam Brumbaugh, the interim COG executive director, is with us to answer any questions that you may have reflected in your discussion.
All right, well, thanks very much. And I'd invite the acting manager to come up whenever you have comments, if you wanted to introduce anything.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have no prepared comments to make to you this evening. As many of you know, this is standard practice in terms of circulating the various portions of the program plan where staff is looking for some guidance on particular issues to all the individual participating municipalities and seeking your comment and your input on topics. I will reside here as you have your conversation, and if there is anything that I might be able to illuminate you on, I'll be happy to try to do so. But as interim executive director, that might be limited. So I'll warn you now, but I'll do my very best. Mostly, it's important to receive all municipal comments, and that's really the purpose of this evening.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate you being here, and I'll note that Kimberly McMullen is also with us online, COG Finance Director. So thank you both for being here. We all had the program plan for review. So what we'll do is just walk through the comment matrix, and then at the end there's space and time for any additional comments that weren't touched on in any of the items in the matrix. So we will start with Center Region Code Administration, electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Should that be installed at the COG building? The estimated capital cost is $100,000. Comments on this item? We had some discussion about this previously in connection to the work to be done on the parking lot. I recall the previous comments were, how can we get these better aligned? So, but I'll look to
Further comments?
Yeah, it's the same comment. I mean, I guess maybe what I didn't see was any response back to the comments we made before saying, yeah, we made a change and here it is. I don't quite know.
Well, that's one of my kind of global comments for the end was, we submitted a lot of comments for the CIP. And so, I think a lot of them could be incorporated here. So I'd like to see some exploration of those comments. So that'll be, I'll add that in at the end, but I think it'll probably be a little repetitive here. So yeah, so I guess our consensus comment had been to align parking lot improvements with installing electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And I think we had some discussion about seeking grants for that and kind of relying on grants to do that kind of thing. So we'll go to the next item, the items within the suite 2 conference room to be repaired and aging furniture to be replaced. This again is under code. That cost is $25,000. That's conference room and conference room furniture. And this is the little code conference room.
Same comments, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. No comment.
And go ahead. I think one comment we usually have with code is, they're an enterprise funds, they have a fund balance, but we still have fiduciary responsibility for, and we do,
Right, yeah.
we have in the past taken out loans on that fund balance, so it's not that there's no relationship there with, what's living in there. So, that fund balance does need to be addressed at some point. I mean, I've spent a little bit of time in that conference room. I couldn't tell you if it needs, or it didn't seem to need repairs, so I would really have to leave it to the staff there who's using it if they see some, some need, but 25,000 seems high. They've got some nice AV resources in there.
Since it is code, it does seem like that is a field that's kind of been tech intensive for a while, so you do need to have, it's not just pencil and paper anymore, so,
that's a good point.
At least having what you need to adequately, for them to just adequately do their jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree that the tech, I can support that more than I can just replacing furniture maybe because it's older dated. I mean, if it's unsafe, then by all
Yes.
means, but, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So maybe a consensus comment is, to ensure that AV equipment is up to date for what code needs for those meetings, but I can't give a comment on furniture. We just haven't spent enough time in that room, so.
Tighten screws on the chairs.
Yeah, I mean, I've sat in there, I didn't notice any problems, so. All right. Again, with code, new construction, should the iPads used by CRCA new construction inspectors be upgraded? This is a capital cost of $18,000, an operational cost of $2,880, and then an ongoing annual net impact of $2,880.
What's the difference? Are we saying that the 2880 is like a one-time and the 1800 is one iPad versus the other 8, or what's the difference between the two numbers?
This would be to outfit, as I understand it, this is to outfit all of the new construction inspectors with newer devices that have the proper connectivity, which is the issue that they're having at the moment. And as a result, with that connectivity, there would be annual fees that are associated with that.
So the 2880 is the connectivity fee and the 18,000 is the actual iPads.
That's
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, no questions then.
I'm just curious if alternatives to iPads have been explored.
I can't comment on that. In the past, I know that they have looked, in fact, I know that they initially tried to utilize cellular phones in order to do the work in the field and translate that back. That's one of the reasons why there was a switch to something that was a little more powerful, and that's why the iPads originally had been selected. But beyond that, I really don't have a lot of information there.
Okay.
So they're using iPads now.
They are,
Okay.
but there was some, again,
But
I
there's
don't have the specifics, but there was a connectivity issue with the ones that they are presently using. That's correct.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think I did recall in there, they would have to be like connected to some type of cellular service so that they can have proper internet and be able to communicate, so.
I don't have any comments on this.
I just know iPads are expensive.
Yeah, so maybe, I mean, I would support a comment
would-
of,
I
has
would-
another option besides an iPad been investigated? That's, I think that's fair, yeah.
I would be open to other options, but as someone who weirdly doesn't use Apple Computer for some reason, I just find my iPhone to be a lot more user-friendly to me than my wife's Android. So it's also, I think it even comes back to what is our staff most comfortable with and can most effectively do their job without having to fight or fidget with it all day.
So I think that's good. We'll put the comment in, and then when the budget hearings are held and Code is there and Walt is there to answer those questions, he can speak to that a little bit better, so.
And he'll know it's coming.
Right, and that's helpful too. He'll know that that comment's coming. Okay.
Also, I imagine when, at the end of an iPad's useful life, there probably is some type of program where we can get some type of rebate back, whether it be through recycling or refurbishment.
That's a good comment too, yeah. Okay, moving to Center Region Planning Agency, should the AmeriCorps program sustainability position be funded for another year? This would be from August 2025 to August 2026. This is an estimated cost of $13,000. Any comments on this
Yes.
item? Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, go ahead. Any comments?
I was
No?
gonna,
Go.
I was gonna say, it seems like when I was on climate, Pam Adams and that department found this to be very useful and helpful to their workload.
And I think, yeah, these, we've had, well, we saw,
Yes.
see Elise on there, we've had
Yeah,
good experience with AmeriCorps, and I think it does save us from adding staff at this time. So I'm hearing support on that item. We'll go to the Center County Metropolitan Planning Organization. Should consulting support for the development of transportation funding applications be funded? 2025 estimated operational cost is $50,700, and that is also the ongoing annual net impact. Comments on this? I could go first because I have a question on this. So is there $50,000 in a fund there? Because I was seeing $100,000 also, or is this just our portion and 50 is from
I
the
believe this
county?
is our portion.
Okay.
Again, this is an MPO-driven matter, and it's also a continuation of what was authorized in the 2024 budget. So this would be the second year, as I understand this, of the additional assistance as far as developing grant support for seeking fundings out of the bill program, or the Bill Act. So my understanding is that this is our share of that funding. There would be an equal or similar share that's forthcoming from the county.
Right, okay. So you'll recall that we hired the transportation grant specialist to really focus solely on getting these grants from the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. This was to supplement that work, so where a consultant would be needed to work on some of the more technical applications, or maybe even just additional applications that we were funding. Do we know if any of those funds were used this year?
I believe that they were used. I don't know that I know that we have submitted at least one application as a result of the work of these individuals, but that is still waiting to be awarded. So, but the work is ongoing.
Thank you. So, I mean, I'd be supportive of this because it doesn't get spent unless it's needed. So if the grant specialist is, needing that technical assistance, or if, there were, a number of different opportunities that we had projects in the TIP ready to apply for, it would all happen at the same time. One person wouldn't be able to do all of that. That being said, I think it is something that has to be monitored closely so that we're making sure that we get money back for this, because all of this is supposed to be paying for itself, not directly, but at some point. That would be my comment, but I'd look to.
I actually take a little bit of a different view on this to say if it's in here, it's going to be used. So I just have that feeling. So I would be more agreeable to taking it out or finding other words or contingency caveats around its use. So I guess my question is, how would the money be, not allocated, but how would it be determined if they want to go ahead and use the money for this? Is there a process? Does it it wouldn't go to general forum or anything, it would just be used because we're approving it?
If there are funds that are going to be expended by the general forum through the MPO program, that would actually need to be addressed by the general forum. I could be wrong. I'm not sure where this particular individual presently is stationed, whether it is actually at the COG building or if it is based at the county. But it's been a joint funded position in 2024, and this is a continuation of that existing position being funded. So I could be wrong, Madam Chair, in terms of how the money is being utilized. It could be on a case-by-case basis, but I do not have that exact information to be able to share with you tonight.
And we can make a need more information
I-
comment as well,
What-
so
when
I'll
I
go
see-
to Amari,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Well, I think this is a program plan, and it's kind of a wish list. And when it comes down to budget, this may not make its way in there if there isn't any kind of on the horizon type things to actually go after. So I guess I'm okay with it as an aspirational thing, keep it at top of mind, from that perspective. But if there is anything at budget time, we probably should, kind of pull it then, perhaps. That's just thought there, in general.
Well, if I may, I know our comments are going to be pooled with other comments from other municipalities. So I would be a fan of making the comment to remove it and then see how many other municipalities agreed with that. And then forcing the function maybe at budget time to see who else is on board. So that would be my comment.
I like it.
I support that.
I see at least
Furrowed
three,
brow
so
over
it's-
there. Got a furrowed brow.
I, to some extent, support this one, and if I recall correctly from other meetings that I've watched on this item, like, if there's, basically, if we were to spend money in that area and were granted with some type of funding, very good day. I think it was actually College Township that used the metaphor, like, it's like gambling. If you put the money in and you get a grant, it's like winning. So, and even just from a lot of the conferences that I've been at, when it does come to like certain types of funding, like the process, some of the processes to get an application in can be like very onerous, that it is sometimes most helpful to have some type of expertise in the process of getting the application out. So.
Yeah, it was made difficult for us in that we have to compete for these funds. So that's,
Right.
We didn't ask to be put in that position, but we're there. So, but we do have a full-time person on this. So, and, this will come back up at budget. So I think we could say,
Yeah.
I think a consensus could be, not supported at this time, looking forward to, discussion at the budget time to hear, plans, maybe there are some specific grants that are being eyed that could be used for this, so. But when this comes back in the budget, at the budget time, I will still be supportive of it, so I'll just.
I like that. It's not like a complete yes, that when it comes to the budget and we're like, oh no, this budget's too much. And then everyone's like, well, you said yes,
Yeah,
at least provides opportunity to slow it down, reevaluate.
It's a difficult one, and I'd like to see what the staff person is capable of completing themselves too. We just started this, and so they've got maybe one grant proposal in, so, it's kind of a slow-going start, I guess it needed to be, so I think we'll have a much better indication next year of exactly what it is the MPO needs to pursue these funds, so. That's a mixed, long comment, if you got that, okay.
It's understood.
Okay. Should the CCMPO Benner Pike corridor study be funded? Under this, I need more information, because I was kind of unclear about how this fits.
Yeah, judging by some of the comments that have been made by other municipalities, I think there does need to be some additional information. Primarily, this is, the MPO would be undertaking this work kind of with the respect of its county purview. And obviously, there's quite a bit of development that's occurring along the Benner Pike at this particular point in time. Some of the comments that have been received thus far, for example, the one that was made by College Township specifically, said that it clearly needs to be studied for potential upgrades or improvements, but there was a question of, is the host municipality engaged as well in terms of they contributing costs toward the overall study? And of course, at this point, we're looking at roughly $7,600, something in that neighborhood. But those are good questions, and unfortunately, I don't have more detail. Jim Saylor, who is ensconced at the Center Region Planning Agency, would be able to provide a lot more detail relative to what would in fact be intended, what is the overall cost of this. But I just, again, don't have all the detail related to this.
Yeah, thank you. And that, I'll look for other comments on this item, but that really was mine, was, how does that fit in the normal scheme of how we do these kinds of studies and who pays for them, and what follows then? So if we do a study and something's needed, it's, do we put it on the tip for Benner? So it was just a little bit confusing. So I would say more information needed. If there's nothing else on that one, go ahead.
I think there's a little bit of a write-up about the whole. There's a bigger study for a lot more money, and 20% local match between the county and COG.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they're asking COG to put up a third of that 20% local match. That's my reading of it. So I guess it's a weird one. I mean, it's a, hey, everybody chip in on this big study that services I-99, which, or on the path to I think there's some benefit to it. But I think it's a, I guess from formulaically, it doesn't make much sense to me. Why, we're, the furthest southwest of Benner that you can get, and we're paying a lion's share of that particular study. So I think, what formula are we using for that, Mr. Finance, and why is it that it's,
That's exact. That's it. It's really not a statement on the need for the study at all. It's where is this in as opposed to the tip process. If we wanted to get something in, we go through a process. So
is the right formula being used here? Is that an appropriate question?
Right, the formula and the process. So
got it.
Both good.
Okay,
Understood.
Yep. Very good. Okay, should the Center County Passenger Rail Access Study be funded? This is a cost of $3,042.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, I see support. I think it hasn't been looked at in a long time, so, and I've heard at the MPO and at Lucy, I've heard support for at least looking at potential, even potential bus connections, so I'm seeing that as consensus. Okay, all right, refuse and recycling.
I'm sorry, can we go back to that one?
Yes.
And is it also on that too, can we just say, like, have they reached out to the Penn State transportation planners? Because I would think that they might be interested in knowing or supporting. I
Right,
guess the
yeah, that's-
study, but
Right.
that's what part of the study would find out, but.
Right, yeah. No, that's a good question. We can bring that up at the MPO and at Lucy, of course, so. So lost my place here.
Yeah, I think there needs to be, like, I know, I understand that there is an interest in the study, but also considering this has kind of been somewhat driven by plans that are already in place from Amtrak for a second round trip through the state as early as late 2026, like, I don't know if it's necessarily, if a study's necessarily the answer to this, to try to connect State College to the train, but maybe even just partnering with, like PennDOT and Amtrak on how we can, how, you know, is there a way they can connect or we can connect, you know, just
Yeah, this was all about
where
access.
access. And I think what I noticed from some of the other municipalities, I think there was a little bit of confusion. They were thinking, no, like direct rail, but like, I think direct rail is kind of more of the long-term goal. Whereas I think for Amtrak to be successful, having that, some type of throughway connection to State College would help them to be successful in that. And also, this is something I have followed for a while, and there used to be a lot of options for people, well, at least a couple options throughout the day for people to connect from State College to like Harrisburg or Altoona. But it's been my understanding when PennDOT reevaluated the bus contracts shortly after COVID, they did eliminate some routes. So if I want to go to Philadelphia now, I can't leave State College till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If I want to go to Pittsburgh, I think I can go out as early as like 6 a.m. and then wait for like basically all day till midnight if I need to take the train out to Chicago.
And I think that those are
Yeah.
the things the study will look at. So it's
So.
really looking, it's a pretty broad
Right.
description in here, so I think all those.
But is it necessarily a study or, you know, just
Well,
us having
it's-
dialogues with
I mean,
various stakeholders?
I think part of the idea behind the study is to gather, like, who would you even talk to, you know, because it's, if you read the
Right.
description, it's, you know, they're assessing demand, identifying most supportable and sustainable options, evaluating willingness and ability of required partners, so I think it's trying to identify all those different things, looking at staff at the MPO and who can coordinate those kinds of activities.
And, yeah, and I think there is interest within COG for, you know, that and data as well.
Yeah.
Especially on ridership. I know a few of us have made a comment, you go down to Lewistown sometimes and there might be like 20 or more people just from Center County taking the train, but what are those solid numbers? Is there a way to try to capture that to kind of see where that demand actually is?
All right, so I'm hearing general consensus on this. Okay. We will move along to refuse and recycling budget. Should a temporary refuse and recycling program assistant be funded? This is an estimated net impact of $27,438 for 2025.
Sitting on the climate action and sustainability and seeing the workload that is there and hearing how it is difficult to stay on top of things with residents calling frequently and other requests coming in, I would say yes, this needs to be funded.
I agree.
Okay. Seems support.
I was just in the facilities meeting, we were talking about the difficulty finding part-time staff. And this just seems like contrary to the discussion earlier today, so
Okay.
I just, that might be something to note there about what can we really find somebody in January on a part-time basis? To do this thing is gonna be fairly difficult with, you know, copying, pasting responses to, hey, where do I put my trash can now, or, you know,
Yeah.
things like that. You know,
Okay, so we could add that as a
something
comment
that, yeah,
too, you know.
Implementation seems odd here, and maybe this number isn't right.
Okay,
I,
so difficulty of part-time positions, support.
I definitely would support it. I think this is a very good testament of us as local government wanting, desiring to provide good customer service to the refuse customers by actually having somebody there that can answer a phone, answer email. I was gonna say at work today, we were talking about AI and about various chat bots, and I could say there was a few people that made comments about trying to communicate to a chat bot is sometimes more cumbersome than just having that old-fashioned connection on a telephone with somebody else on the line, so.
And this is temporary because we're switching contracts, we're switching systems, so it's really to, you know, there's just gonna be a lot of change over the next year, so it's temporary for that purpose, so I'm seeing support. Okay. Okay, should the refuse and recycling program contract for removal of refuse containers, this would cost $10,000, and this is for residents to put out their old cans that are not any longer gonna be useful for the new automatic pickup trucks that we'll be contracting with. So, do we want these collected at a cost of $10,000?
I'm supportive of it, yes.
I want to be supportive of it, but also considering the price of some of those cans that people have, they might be better off putting it on Marketplace and seeing if somebody will
And
give
you
them
don't have
40
to put
bucks
them
for
out.
it,
I
so.
mean, somebody can
you know.
keep it, yeah. This is just the option to put it out. Sorry.
But for me, I don't know why there would be a cost associated with this. I can just break it and throw it in my trash and it goes away anyway.
Matt.
No, am I wrong? I don't know.
Saying recycle it.
Right.
Recycle parts of it.
Was there, were they gonna look at recycling what they collected?
Yes.
I believe yes
Okay, I
is
did
the
hear.
answer to that
Yeah,
question.
okay, I
And
thought it
part
could-
of the concern about doing what was suggested is because these items can, or at least have the potential to be recycled.
Right, so I guess that's my question. If I were just to, maybe this is wrong, just break it and put it in the recycle bin, the new one, isn't it being taken care of at a regular cost?
Well, in that particular case, that type of plastic in the red bin, for example,
Would be
the answer would be no.
Right, they
Because
wouldn't
it's
take
not
that.
the correct type of recyclable material.
Yeah.
However, they can be recycled in mass, but in a different process, likely at a different location.
Okay, thank you. Got it. I'm good with this.
Okay,
Well, your question now has me going, well, why? How do we know this will be worth it? So that's probably just some analysis.
okay, well,
I
so
think
that,
it's
yeah, so I guess, you know, I'm hearing a consensus comment would be, are they gonna be recycled? Is there another consensus comment? I'm supportive of this because of the convenience. I think people will wanna get rid of those old cans. Do I hear a general support, or was there a no?
Something just occurred to me. I remember being in a climate action sustainability committee meeting, and there was we did have a little bit of a, not necessarily a discussion item, but it was mentioned that in Center County, we pretty much do recycle everything, including plastics, and then I remember, I think it was Ted Onufrak that did make the remark, we can't recycle black plastics, something about the dye in the black plastics cannot be recycled, and of course, I don't know, considering a lot of these trash containers are black, you know, is that?
So I could think that would be part of the
Unless-
question.
Yeah,
Are we is refuse and recycling looking at?
maybe just a little bit more information, like, is there some other process that we wouldn't normally utilize that we're utilizing for this as a one-time deal?
So, but we're talking like the red containers only, right? When I see removal of refuse, I guess I need more information as to what containers were
The
specifically.
intention here is to provide a service to existing trash customers to remove their old garbage cans.
Okay.
Because we're gonna have
Okay,
burn
and
Myers.
because of the fact that the new program will necessitate new side load and side lift cans to be issued to each customer.
Then, and I'm sorry.
No,
Then I would make the case that this is not necessary, because I don't know anybody that's going to say, take my can and recycle it when I can just use it someplace else on my property. I don't see a use for this. I don't know.
I would want mine recycled, because what am I gonna do with it?
I just,
Right.
I'll take it.
And yeah, there's people like Matt that will take it.
So I'm hearing a
I have a
yes,
use.
a yes, a no, a no.
No.
I think we're
Yeah.
split on this. No, not supportive of this.
I think the support versus not I don't think it's the point for me. It's about these dollars being used for collecting cans, and I think it's
That, yeah.
okay. I think it's budget time, are we gonna do this or not? So
So you're not supportive of having this in the, because they'll
I think it's fine.
probably,
My point has been, everything in here is fine for this program plan. I think when it comes for dollars and cents, and we're like, all right, we see a 15, 20, 25% increase in our contribution, then I'm gonna start,
so put it in and then we can cut it later.
That's a-
'Cause
yeah, I've been
whatever we
pretty
say in here is going in the budget. So if we
Yeah.
say yes to this, then it'll go in the budget, and then your
And
point
then-
is we'll cut it then,
That's
okay?
right.
So
If
then I'm
it's-
seeing 3 yeses, so I think we're supportive, but maybe not.
Yeah.
When we get to the
Be,
budget.
be interesting to know, like, is 10,000 just where we start? You know, what if there is enough mats out there that do just take Patty's can and use it?
I thought they had a.
Drop them off on my
Yeah.
property.
And that's something during budget hearings we
Right.
can ask too. You know, those are good questions for that, and we'll come back, you know, we'll be able to give Matt feedback for those budget hearings with questions. Because I would assume that was an estimate, you know, that they got an estimate from somebody based on the number of households, so.
It's interesting that when the committee selected the new vendor and kind of said, hey, we're gonna do this cool thing, it wasn't a consideration then, like, what is everybody gonna do with the cans? And so, you know, it's kind of probably the right thing to do, to say, hey, now that you're moving this in the process, let's go ahead and collect all the old ones, recycle what we can, and unfortunately, get rid of what we can't.
It just kind of stopped it, we're gonna recycle them, and
Yeah, I think
It
there was.
stopped at new contract. And I think
Yeah.
people have been asking questions, and so this is a result of those questions.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
my feeling there.
Okay, we will move to, should the refuse and recycling program food waste drop-off program be funded? That's an estimated operational cost of $12,000 and capital cost of $4,000. Now, we hosted a pilot program here, so would Ferguson be a site for this, or?
I don't know the specifics. This would be a continuation and slight expansion of the existing program.
Okay. I think there were a fair number of signups for that, as I recall. I thought it was,
maybe over 300, maybe pushing 400s. The demand was there.
yeah.
Is there I guess we've done this, we piloted it, we did stuff with the scraps, and have we, I guess, attained enough revenue based on that? You know, kind of the output of the scraps? Anybody know the answer to that?
That I have no information on that. Perhaps that was something that was discussed in committee, but I'm unaware of any dollars or revenue that has been generated as a result of this. Primarily, this was an effort to reduce volume of what ended up in the landfill. As far as actual dollars as a result of the collections, I have no idea. I would venture a guess, the answer is no, but I don't know that for certain.
Yeah, I'm just aware of an organization in Cleveland that does this. They go around collecting scraps from businesses and homeowners, and they take it, they compost it, and then they sell the compost. And so if we're doing that and we're funding this program, which is great, now is the second half of like, all right, now we need to go ahead and, I don't know, engage an organization that makes compost and say, here we got this thing, we'll sell you this output for X, and you go sell it for, for
Yeah,
Y.
now that you mention that, I believe that these scraps are actually being taken to the borough location for composting purposes. But again, that's thinly understood information on my part.
Okay.
I do recall they wanted to pilot a curbside program, but it sounded like we had some snags with DEP that we weren't able to do it in 2023, so.
Awesome, thank you. And that's the comment is, how do we get this operationalized and revenue neutral?
Yeah.
Like, what's the plan? Because this is a program plan. There's no plan.
It's quite staggering,
Sorry.
And maybe it was discussed more in climate, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know, the compost pickup and those arrangements. Okay, so,
This is something that, there are a couple things on here that hopefully will be coming up at Monday's meeting.
okay, so I guess more information needed
Yes,
would be the
I think that's
consensus
appropriate.
comment on this item. Including the location of the drop-offs, I think that's important. Okay, moving to Parks and Recreation. Should a program specialist for Parks and Recreation be hired in April 2025? Let's see, okay, so the estimated personnel cost is $119,000, I'm gonna round, $119,000. Plus operational is about $2,000, so about $121,000. They're saying in here that the estimated revenue from that position would be $18,000. So a net of $102,000 to $107,000. Impact cost, $102,000 to $107,000 next year and ongoing. So this is a program specialist.
And it is a new position.
I was confused by this one, only because I love that in something else I was reading, they talked about succession planning and stuff, but then they also said in the very document that they don't have any, administrative support. And so it seemed to me to go right into another position. Wouldn't you wanna hire somebody administratively to see if that doesn't ease the workload? But that was my comment, just, it seemed like they were going right. They did reduce it from a grade 7 to a grade 5 or something, and, but I didn't know if just clerical and support administrative staff could help ease the workload of it. Was it the sports director and the program? So anyway, that was my only thought, but.
Okay. Comments?
So we talk, there's a lot of discussion about high demand, and we need a person for the high demand, yet there's a, hey, municipalities pay for it. And I think we need to, I'll say it again, we need to look at the revenue model for center region residents and non-residents, such that some of this is paying for itself to some extent, right? And I get it, there's, we want to serve the community, but, offering stuff for $2 is not the answer. So.
I have been supportive of this based on what I have heard from the Parks Director. There is a need to have some extra assistance with the programming. if I recall correctly, especially during the summer months, but there is also a need for this person in the winter because there is, while it may be a little bit of a slower time for the Parks Department in the winter, they're kind of like thinking ahead to spring and summer and trying to get everything put together, but also at the same time, you do have ongoing full-time employees that do have good time off benefits and may sometimes need to step out for other reasons where it is helpful to have that person also be a little bit of a backup from time to time to be able to answer phones or fill in for somebody if they're on vacation or needed to unexpectedly call off on a particular day. Whereas right now it's, sometimes those gaps in coverage do get a little bit tight. And also I do like the idea of, with this person, there is a little bit of opportunity to gain more revenue. I kind of wish the number was a little bit larger, but.
Yeah, and for me, I am in support of the position, but I look further down the road and say, but when does it end? Not the position, but we keep adding parks, we keep doing this, we keep doing that, so how many more positions do we need? And I'd like us to just maybe take a pause as we do these in the future to say what is going to be the total cost of ownership every time we add a new park or a new feature or new functionality, and look at the resource requirements of those demands. So for me, this is about, yes, I see the need for this position, but I want us to be focusing on the future and asking the tougher questions about, well, what is this actually going to take to run in the future? What other positions might need to be required, generally speaking, across other things? So, just a overall comment.
I mean, my comment, and then we'll have to get some consensus, because this was a lot of comments on this one position, but, I'm hesitant to support adding something like this when we're still in this governance ad hoc committee process and trying to really, look at the appropriate alignment of staffing, who people are reporting to. I think it's separate from this, maybe that is needed. I don't know, because of the way it's structured over there. We don't get that kind of information. So I'm I would be in the dark about, what exactly is needed. So, we do hear a lot about wait lists and, demand for these programs, but we have no authority on changing the fee schedule. So, what are the fees for these programs? And so I guess my comment would align with Omari's and Patty's, looking more globally at the revenue model, the fee structure, with having the authority, and with this committee, I don't know what's going to change there, because to me, what would make sense is to really have staffing under the purview of the authority, and so they would be monitoring more of this. So because they're more closely in tune with what's needed there. That being said, I wouldn't be supportive of this right now. I think it's kind of ad hoc to be adding these things without looking more. I mean, even with the revenue number, I'm not clear on where that comes from. So, because it's not adding an instructor anyways.
No, and I guess my question is, earlier this evening, we heard that other municipalities had weighed in on certain ones already. Do we have a sense as to what other municipalities are saying about this one item?
We have received comments from all the other municipalities at this point in time. Your comments will kind of be a late addition. The agency directors to which the comments are directed have responded. Unfortunately, your comments tonight won't actually generate responses from the agency directors, given the fact that it's going to the Finance Committee on Thursday. So unfortunately, in that regard, we're not going to be able to incorporate those. Specifically relative to this, I think it's fair to say it's a bit of a mixed bag relative to this position. I can tell you that I think that Mr. Thompson alluded to a number of the issues that have been consistently faced by the various program directors over time for some extended period of time, and I think well, I know that it is being anticipated with the addition of Whitehall Road Park and its opening, that some of those scenarios are gonna be exacerbated. So that's one of the reasons why this is being put forward. This happens to be the Parks and Recreation's #1 priority in terms of funding in 2025 budget. So I think that is significant it's a significant tell, if you will, from the agency itself of all the various needs that it may have. It believes that this is their primary target, if you will, to develop some of that relief. And while I do believe that there would be some types of administrative services that might be provided, I do believe that it is primarily intended to be a relief valve, a relief mechanism for the actual program directors during these very busy times in terms of spring and summer.
I'm gonna maybe ask another clarifying question, because often in finance, we hear things like, COG was under budget, but then the municipalities added all these extra things on top. Is this item here one of those extra things? Or is this in the CIP and everything going forward right now?
Personnel.
That's under the budget,
I'm sorry.
personnel.
Yeah, personnel typically doesn't get identified within the CIP, although there is a staffing plan that COG has done or did a number of years ago. And I believe that this is a position that's been identified within that staffing plan. Again, anticipating the onboarding, if you will, or the starting of the Whitehall Road Regional Park. So that does exist. This has not just been kind of plucked out of thin air. It's part of a plan. To the chair's point, yes, there are a variety of different questions involving and surrounding the authority at this particular point in time. One of the things, just as a reminder, there is a comprehensive parks plan and strategy that the authority needs to look at whenever the Parks Agency presents a budget to them, and the Parks Agency should be developing that budget based on that plan as well. And then that eventually works its way through our current system, gets to finance onto general forum for final approval. But I can give you some reassurance that there has been quite a bit of thought. It was actually pulled from last year's budget entirely. It had been on their list. It was not their #1 priority, and it was not funded. And as a result, they're coming back this year because of that need.
So, but yes, right, exactly. So the guideline is set, which is kind of, the guideline is basically what, inflation. So what is, what we have now, what is all of this gonna cost next year? So that'll be an additional, 3 to 4%, somewhere in there.
3.78 is the guideline.
Okay, so anything above that, like these positions, are exactly that. It will be, yes.
It will
The
be.
municipalities chose to
municipalities
add
went ahead and added
this,
this.
because
Therefore,
that
I
bumps
will-
us above that 3.78.
Right.
Yeah.
I would not be in support of this then. Because again, we make it so black and white in finance that, no, COG was under budget, but then the municipalities just do. Because this falls into the do. No. That's my thought.
Yeah, so anything that is not within, yeah. So it's a good question.
I think I would confer with the chair on probably wanting a little bit more information. I just kind of wondering how this position just ties into like the their youth programming, for instance, because I think they do have like over just 100 people working youth programming, which I can tell you as an HR professional, just on getting youth programming instructors to hire is time intensive enough. But then to hear the person on the other side before they get that hire to me is a very intensive job for them that even involves a lot of overtime in some cases. I don't know if that's the same case with whoever's, handling, but that's just one slice of
Okay.
possibly the day in the life of our staff now
So I'm hearing
without this
concern
person.
about, this will push us over our guideline.
Yes.
Interested in a more thorough investigation of our revenues and fee models and municipal contributions. Yeah. Okay, so then we have the 5-year staffing and study plans, which is at the end of page 128 here. So the staffing includes that refuse and recycling part-time person, this program specialist at $120,000 for 2026. There are 2 parks positions, one marketing and fundraising, another parks specialist totaling $250,000. In 2027, a sports specialist for $130,000, and then another parks specialist for $130,000. Comments on staffing, and then the studies we had discussed. The only upcoming one would be the IT study and 5-year plan update in 2027.
Madam Chair, I would suggest, obviously your discretion, I don't know how deep you need to dive into the 5-year staffing plan at this particular point. I do think it's going to be important to give the new executive director the opportunity to take a look at this, both how the budget is being constructed, how analysis is being done in terms of a number of these items. And I think that this falls into that as well. I think where the staffing study is appropriate for discussion at this time really does deal with those items that might be carried forward in 2025. I will tell you at this point in time, it's a plan, and I don't know how much reality exists within these numbers beyond the present budget year that we're concerned with. So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
It is, and I think that's a really good comment, that I would support is, encouraging the new executive director to really evaluate this program plan, what's been presented along with the CIP and the staffing plan. So yeah, I wouldn't have anything additional on those 2 items. I think you'll have a good opportunity really in finance to kind of go over some of these comments, since we just went over them. So I think that'll be good, and I think you have a lot of feedback already for budget hearings, so.
We appreciate that. Quick closing comment, if I may.
Absolutely.
The administration, primarily Kim McMullen in finance, is working very hard to address a lot of the concerns that we all have had over the last couple of years with the COG budget. I'm very aware of those. I've experienced those similar to what Centrise and other managers have dealt with here. I'm very optimistic. I believe that we will do our very best to make perhaps some harder choices prior to a budget being delivered to the Finance Committee to assist the Finance Committee in making their task a little more palatable, a little more streamlined. And so we're working diligently as we speak. We're putting in a lot of hours on the budget as it is this time. The agency directors have provided us with a document for a first pass review, which we're in the process of doing right now. Once that first review has been done internally, it's going back out to the various agency directors for some fine tuning. And then final decisions will be made and the submission will be made to the Finance Committee. So we will be on track as far as start of the various budget hearings. And the hope is that, again, this year will be a little bit different and a little bit more comfortable from a standpoint of making various decisions that need to be made.
That's great.
If I
Yeah,
may.
yeah.
Just a question, because looking over, of course, the Finance Committee meeting coming up on Thursday, when would we anticipate, again, just so everybody here has the same timeline in our heads, this being brought to Finance Committee for review, et cetera?
It will not be before the last week of August. But your budget hearings, if I'm not mistaken, I think begin the second week of, I think it's the second week of September. So I would anticipate that the Finance Committee will have this for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer.
Okay. Thank you.
Prior
So
to this.
again, I think it's good, so we're all on the same page, knowing that this isn't something that's going to be discussed this Thursday, but still coming down the pipe.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much. I appreciate your attention.
Well, thanks very much for coming. Thanks to Kimberly. Really appreciate that. And for taking all those notes on our comments. Okay. All right, we will move to discussion on the Stormwater Management User Fee Ordinance 1066, Resolution 2021-05, Resolution 2021-06, Resolution 2021-07, and Resolution 2021-08 and 2021-14, and we'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to acknowledge that, I do appreciate the opportunity to review with the board this evening, the June 18th discussion on the Stormwater Management Utility Fee Ordinance, as I was out of the office on bereavement leave unexpectedly. I've had time to review and watch the CNET recording for the Board of Supervisors discussion on this particular item, and it sounded like to me that the board is considering some significant changes, and I am looking just for some clarification this evening on that, and given the hour, I'm really just trying to get a general consensus of understanding as to where the board was with a general idea as to how we might proceed forward. But yeah, it seemed to me that the board was looking to consider some significant changes that may impact the budget priorities and the development of the budget based on this particular item. And with that, my initial thought is that might really remain in the board's authority and purview. But also giving consideration to the significant changes that were demonstrated in the board's CIP discussions, and just understanding that there were some changes made from what was proposed in the CIP in the proposed CIP to what was adopted this evening. And so just giving a little bit of thought to the funding allocation changes, to the pipelining, and then also just acknowledging too, after watching the recording from the board's discussion, that the expenses or the cost for the level of service that was initially adopted by the township have just increased dramatically, just given based on inflation, right? We estimated initially when we prepared the level of service with $3 linear foot, and now we're looking at $10 to $11 linear foot. So, as I'm giving some consideration to all of these items and understanding that the board may want to continue to have the discussion as it relates to changes to the stormwater management utility fee ordinance itself, it's staying in the board's purview, of course, would allow for that discussion to happen at a regular meeting or a special meeting, which those meetings are advertised at the beginning of the year. So the general public is aware of those discussions, including those that want to take an active role and participate in the discussion to give input. I would also acknowledge too that any changes to the ordinance, whether it be an amendment or potentially rescinding the ordinance, could be put into effect this year for changes to be impacted on the stormwater fee bill, or excuse me, the tax bill statement in 2025. So I wanted just to bring that general observation and comment to the Board of Supervisors, and if the board would share this evening that there is no interest in having significant changes to the stormwater management utility fee, that I would suggest that we bring this back to the board for further discussion and continue to have the conversations here as part of a regular meeting or a special meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That was an interesting evening because I was remote that night too. So I was able to kind of go back and reflect too a little bit on the discussion that was had. And I heard a similar discussion. There was definitely interest in evaluating, reviewing the ordinance and the associated resolutions. I was interested in pursuing that too. The following week we had the CIP special meetings, and there were some significant changes to the video assessment and pipelining, which had also occurred in the budget last year. So, to me, it's making it kind of evident that there's some priority changes, and this is kind of an optimal time to go back and look. I think that makes sense too, as far as timing, to ask staff to bring something back to the board. One of the concerns too is that, if we were to do anything else, it may not be covered by CNET. So this way we could have CNET coverage, and again, allow as much public input as is desired, anybody who wants to come and participate in that public input. So I think just kind of reflecting back on that, yeah, and I think that's an excellent point too. So if there were going to be significant changes with the ordinance, keeping this on track at our regular meetings where we can deliberate would allow those changes to go into or to affect our budget discussions for next year. So because we're already in August, so to kind of keep things moving along. And again, this is what I heard. I had the benefit of kind of being, a little bit removed and listening, so that was interesting. I think, and if nothing else, I think if we want to keep the ordinance as is and move forward with that, I think at the very least we do need to reevaluate the adopted level of service in that program, because the costs and the timeline aren't relevant anymore. So we do need to adjust those things. So, yeah, so I'd be supportive of asking staff to move forward with gathering this, whatever information we want. If it's, on the infrastructure, how that's been impacted by the fee so far, the costs, and the overhead. So what is the cost of administering the fee? What are the resources that are involved in that? We've had it now for a couple of years, so we have some data that we could go back and look at. So, yeah, so I think that's a good plan. I want to open it up and start on that end.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds good that if we had that data brought here to a board discussion as a regular meeting. I like it, yeah. I'm supportive of that.
I'm supportive of this. As a matter of fact, I remember 3 years ago, I went around the township. I talked to many of you, and I said I want to take another look at this. I want you to have an opportunity to be here and present in this room. I know many of you had said that was what you wanted in I think it was 2020 or 2021 when this was first passed. So, I say, let's do this, and I want to make sure there is opportunity for the public to be able to attend in person. Don't necessarily support anything during the day when everyone's working. I do know a lot of our residents do work during the day, so they like to be able to be here in the evenings when we deliberate. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
Anything that keeps this front and center and being revisited is absolutely what I'd like to see, plus one, everything Jeremy said there. And yes, let's continue and let's dive into this.
Good point. Amari, thoughts on that?
I think the agenda item that I requested last month had a documented approach and process for engaging. I would like to see the same. Like, we're talking about stuff, but to say let's do it in a meeting and we'll do some stuff, like I'd like to see something in writing from whoever is thinking about this, right? That says here's exactly how we're going to do it, Here's how we're gonna collect information from the community. Here's how we're gonna collect information from the board. Here's how we're gonna let people talk in the meeting. Because I think I'm gonna call it arrogance for just a second, so pardon I can't think of the right word, but we're kind of, I guess, not just taking a human-centric approach, we're taking kind of governmental Robert's Rules approach to a lot of this stuff, and I wanna just like, take a step back and let's just talk like humans about a thing that there's some people that care deeply about and wanna like get their piece said, but having to wait to talk at the podium is a barrier and a thing that's like, it's a turnoff to some folks. So I want to kind of remove that. Hence why in what I wrote on paper, I wanted to do a workshop or something that got people to just like, yeah, let's get in a room and talk. That said, I'm supportive of whatever we do. Let's just get it on paper how we're going to do it. So whoever's going to take the lead, I've already put something on paper. Somebody else take and go do it. Let's do whatever we're going to talk about, but let's do it. And in a way, again, it's human centric, not this kind of like we're sitting on the pulpit, with we get to talk first and then everybody gets to talk and thank you very much for what you got to say, right? Just a little bit more like empathy for how folks are feeling about this. I will also in the same voice say we don't need an advisory committee for this. Like they did their jobs. We need feedback and input and data that show, Lisa, you hit it right on. Like let's look at the data over the last few years and then go, okay, we have some ordinance things to change. I have again put on paper an ordinance change I'd like to see, and we haven't moved on it. So I'd like to move. Whether it's one change or 3 changes over the next year, let's make the changes. You may hear a little frustration. It's just we haven't moved on a thing that I put on paper. Like we got it. Let's move. So I'll pause there for other things.
Good, okay, and I see there are public comments. If you want to come up to the podium and give us your name and township of residence.
Bill Keogh, Ferguson Township. I know that a few weeks ago, Tom Songer approached the board and specifically asked for the reconstituting of the advisory committee. But I think part of because I've talked with Tom since then, and part of what Tom was intending is right in line with what Omari just said, okay? We don't have the ability to manage this process. And the only option was the reconstituting of an official committee that you all created as part of the original process. But certainly what Omari has suggested is pretty much in line with what I think Mr. Songer was interested in going through in terms of a process. So to that extent, I certainly am supporting that as a path forward in this process. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? And then I'll go back. If the manager had any other feedback on the discussion or.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would say that I did watch the dialogue or the recording, and I did hear Supervisor Patterson's request for a workshop, and I would say that the governing body is in a position to have public meetings where you have to facilitate and required requirements in accordance to our charter as well as the Sunshine Act, and also the way that you're engaging with the residents on a particular matter of policy that I mean, there was a point in time where the township, did look to a stormwater advisory committee to make a recommendation, and it was separated from the governing body for a reason, and there's protections and understanding. So I really can't empathize and understand that there's that humanistic approach that we want to take at times, but in your roles as the governing body or the officials that need to make decisions on policy, I absolutely agree that you want to hear from individuals, and I would suggest that if it's a regular meeting, a work session, or a special meeting, that you invite the public and a great deal of, we can put a lot of communications. I'm suggesting a regular meeting and a special meeting because those meetings are already publicly advertised, and the general public that is watching and following government, they're familiar with the fact that the Board of Supervisors is meeting on the first and the third Tuesday at 7 p.m. and the special meetings that are advertised in January are advertised for the second Wednesday at 12:15. And so I think if you want to have the most turnout, it's likely to hold the discussion at one of the meetings that have already been advertised and that are generally reliable times where the public can attend a meeting. If you hold a work session outside of any one of those times, and then you have to be paying attention to the discussion and paying attention to information on our website. And so I'm just acknowledging there are benefits to both, but either option does require the Board of Supervisors, if there's 3 or more of you in one room, you are in a position to listen and not necessarily, and forgive me, I'm not sure exactly how we want to define a workshop, but your role would be to listen, and then, after the public is done providing input, whether it be in a work session, special meeting, regular meeting, and then to deliberate. Mm-hmm. And of course, with an informed opinion and guidance from your manager as well as your solicitor. So with that in mind, I would suggest that while I acknowledge that there was a request for an ordinance amendment, and the chair certainly is in a position to determine the agenda, and we have a process for bringing a consent agenda item to the Board of Supervisors, and that is in process. As your manager, I am absolutely pressing on the fact that the general public, including Mr. Songer, I would certainly write to him and let him know that the board will have discussions, and we encourage him and anyone else in our community who's interested in having comment, that we let them know that we want to have these discussions, whether it be over the next several regular meetings or coordinate work sessions or the next several special meetings. And so we can certainly put something together in the next regular meeting where we're proposing that it be a regular meeting, several regular meetings. We'll give some thought to that. What I'm hearing from you, though, is that some information, particularly on resources required, staff's time to administer the stormwater ordinance fee. Mm-hmm. That information we can put together. We can put some information together and begin to have that dialogue. And you can also, solicit feedback from the general public. And again, whether it's a work session or a special meeting or a regular meeting, we do have requirements and a general approach, and so folks would come to the podium. But I would suggest to accommodate, you could maybe open up the time length and just let folks speak, until they are able to say all of what they want to say. So instead of pressing for time restrictions.
That's exactly my thought, and I think, the pushing out of the information about when that discussion would be held, it's a little different than we do most items, it's, we don't singularly, push out information on one topic of discussion, but I think that'd be entirely appropriate. Having it at a special meeting or a regular meeting allows us to deliberate, to take action, and it means that CNET would be covering it. So there's transparency, and there's the ability for us to actually deliberate and not just listen, which is what we would do at a work session. We could actually deliberate, and we could really take action at those meetings. So I'll look for more comment, but then I think, if we want to move forward on this, we can take a motion tonight that would ask staff to move on this and to bring it back to the board at the next earliest available opportunity for us to look at that information.
I guess I have a question, and related then to our strategic plan and the work that was done there. how would these meetings be different, or how were those meetings different than what this proposal is?
That's a great question. We held subcommittee meetings where there was two supervisors in a meeting at each time. And so you would be engaged, yeah, so we didn't violate Sunshine Act. So, and so then there was minutes recorded for each of those meetings with two supervisors, and then it came back to a regular meeting, and the minutes of those discussions took place in the big meeting, which is another option, but the governing body would not be hearing from. And I would suggest that this type of a matter, right, where it's a policy with a financial impact to your residents, and a fee that's being administered should be held in a group setting, not in subcommittee meetings.
Because part of the interest here is to keep the dialogue moving and, potential action on track so that it can be incorporated into a budget proposal this year if there is going to be some change made, so.
I think with the board, it seems like this issue is very important, so maybe you say to staff can hit me, in September, we want to have a special meeting at night. Yes, we will have to advertise for it, but we can focus on this issue. And maybe it is only an hour and a half because people come, but then you don't feel the limits of your agenda as you do tonight, right? You've got all these other things you got to get to. You set it up, this is all we're going to talk about, all things stormwater, that's what we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is a nuisance, but at the same time, I think those kinds of discussions are actually very helpful and actually happen more quickly because everybody's focused on that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that as a starting point.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So if someone is, unless there's more deliberation, I'm hearing some interest in proceeding and moving forward with something.
Do you have one made up?
No.
So if you want, Madam Chair, we can just, as your manager, I can just present a future agenda item for consideration with information that I've heard. I mean, you can do a formal motion if the board would like to do that, or we can bring it back representing much of what was discussed this evening.
Let's do it that way.
I was gonna say.
I'm just acknowledging for time.
Exactly.
But maybe you can do it at the next meeting.
At the next meeting, the solicitor has great ideas over here.
Yeah,
Because I know getting five of you in a room might take
Yeah.
some time, so.
So the
At a
next
different
meeting in
time.
August, we can add this to have a little bit more, as Supervisor Patterson has requested, like a general idea of what the plan will look like.
Mm-hmm. And then to bring it back in September with the gathered information on administration, all costs, all of that.
Yes.
Okay. Do we?
I was gonna say, should I motion to table or just motion to
I
further
think
discuss this at another?
Nothing to table, but I think, I think it would make sense to have a motion to direct staff to bring this back to the board at the,
Madam Chair, I would like staff to bring this back to the Board of Supervisors at an upcoming meeting.
This is Patty, I'll second.
okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, so I think we're clear on that, what they're gathering. We can discuss next steps, but I think this is a constructive approach that gets traction in, not quickly, but in an expeditious way, so. All right. Thank you, and thanks to the solicitor. Okay, we will move to the Peace Center and Cemetery Preliminary Land Development Plan, and we'll go to Christina Bassett, Community Planner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Included in your agenda is the Peace Center and Cemetery Preliminary Land Development Plan. This plan proposes a 3,000 square foot place of assembly and a cemetery, approximately 55,000 square feet or 1.26 acres. with 32 associated parking spaces. The proposed development is located at 3765 West College Avenue. The lot is 10,157 acres. I'm sorry, I misread mine. 10.157 acres. And it's zoned rural agricultural. The applicant was granted a variance on July 27th for 2021 for an undersized lot in the rural agricultural zone. And the front portion of the site is located in the floodplain in Zone A, and the applicant was granted a variance from the floodplain regulations to allow the construction of the proposed access driveway. The applicant also received a variance from providing a hydrology and hydraulic study in order to determine the base flood elevation of that Zone A flood zone. The Planning Commission and staff have reviewed the Peace Center and Cemetery preliminary plan, and Planning Commission recommends conditional approval with the conditions outlined in the Community Planner's memo.
All right, thank you. And I will take a motion on this item.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors move to approve the Peace Center and Cemetery with the conditions outlined in the Community Planner's memo dated July 23rd, 2024.
Zumari, second.
Okay, any questions, comments on this? Not seeing any. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, say no. All right, and we will move to application for consideration of a modification waiver from Chapter 22, Section 303 for brickwork self-storage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On July 10th, 2024, Pantera Engineering submitted an application for consideration of a modification waiver for Chapter 22, Section 303, review of preliminary plan for the brickwork self-storage preliminary land development plan. The applicant is requesting the submitted plan be processed as a preliminary/final plan, as the final plan will be the exact same plan, thus saving the developer, engineers, and township time and additional meetings. The Planning Commission did review this modification waiver request and is recommending approval.
Okay, would someone care to make a motion?
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors move to approve the application for consideration of a modification waiver for Chapter 22, Section 303, review of preliminary plan for the brickwork self-storage preliminary LDP.
Is there a second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, any discussion on this item? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. All right. And we'll move to application for consideration of a modification waiver from Chapter 22, Section 5C01.B for brickwork self-storage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pantera Engineering submitted actually 3 applications for modifications. I just kind of lumped them in this one little section since they're all all related to Section 5C01B. The applicant is requesting to reduce the required parking spaces from 13 to 11 due to the irregular shape of the lot. The second request is to permit the shared driveway to be used as access to the building and parking spaces. And the third request is to provide parking on the side of the building near the shared access road and to only provide 1 loading space instead of the required 4. The Planning Commission reviewed this and is recommending approval of the modifications.
Okay, someone care to make a motion?
Because this does not adversely affect parking in Pine Grove Mills, I'll move that the Board of Supervisors move to approve the applications for consideration of a modification waiver for Chapter 22, Section 5C01.B for the brickwork self-storage preliminary LDP.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, any discussion on this item? Seeing none?
Sorry, yeah, one moment here. And it's more of it's a broader question on these kind of, these waivers. When is a waiver kind of approvable versus not approvable? Like how, does everybody get a waiver, or do some people not get a waiver because it's too egregious, or can you kind of opine on that? Like if they wanted 8 spaces, would it not even make it here?
It's the Board of Supervisors' discretion whether to approve or not approve. We just present it to the
Sorry.
application team.
Let me recommended to get here, right? So if somebody had a waiver and it's for 5 spaces instead of 13, would it even make it here?
Well, it would make it to the Board of Supervisors. It was just the Planning Commission they may recommend not
Okay.
to approve it.
All right, got it. So it always
Whatever
gets here.
various reasons.
Any waiver, it always makes it here, no matter how egregious it is. It's on us to approve, disapprove. Okay, all right. It's just, I think there are some things that I thought weren't making it here. And so I was asking that question to make sure everything got here. So this is good.
It would
And,
come as a recommendation for, it would come with the planning commission's recommendation for or against it. But it
Okay.
will make it, a modification waiver will make its way to the Board of
okay.
Supervisors.
And the timeline part of this is one reason why some of these are kind of coming along a little more quickly, question mark?
I would not be able to answer that with certainty as to how this particular land development plan got moved forward quickly. I think that we were just the applicant was able to get those responses back in a timely manner. It's just the way that staff worked. This particular plan, staff responded to questions quickly and the applicant responded back to the questions, updated the plan. And so this particular item just didn't have a whole lot of issues. But it is also one of the first plans to go through this process that we've had our consultant here from beginning to end. That is one variable that I would say is different than maybe some of the recent ones that we've had in front of the board over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'm in full disclosure and seeing it, I was thinking, I'm 7 months in now, first meeting I saw, we approved an extension for another 3 months and, this is the largest number of items I've ever seen. And so I think it was, is our process better?
Yes.
Such that we're hitting these, we're able to get them in and out, and is there, this looks promising, I feel like.
I would agree with you in
Okay.
that the board is seeing all of the modification waivers in one evening, whereas sometimes in the past, they were presented to the board as the need was discovered throughout the process. And so at times it was maybe you'd get one of the modification waivers because it was recognized as part of the review process between staff and the applicant. And then maybe the review continued weeks, months later, and then there was another recognition, we actually might want to consider a modification waiver. So to your point, yes, I think as well, this is very promising. Staff's done a really great job at, moving these comment responses quickly, and the applicant has responded really well in this case to the process. And so, yes, it is good.
Great. So kudos team, kudos planning commission for kind of able to knock this out. I'm liking this. Thank you. Didn't expect to say that, but I am. Sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, we had a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, say no. All right. Okay, we will go to an application for consideration of a modification and waiver from Chapter 22, Section 516.12 for brickwork self-storage.
I will preface this for Mr. Patterson there. This lot has a very unique shape and some unique constraints, so hence all the modification requests. An application for consideration of a modification waiver from Chapter 22, Section 516.12 for buffer yards has been submitted. The applicant contends that between the unique shape of the lot and the fact that the side yard is proposed to function as a shared driveway and has an existing access and utility easement and stormwater requirements, the buffer yard requirements cannot be met. The applicant is proposing to install a required number of plantings only in different locations on site. Included in the agenda is a landscaping plan that shows proposed locations of the plantings. The Planning Commission did review this and is recommending approval.
All right. Anyone care to make a motion?
Zamar, I move to approve the application for consideration for a modification waiver from Chapter 2, Section 516.12.
This is Matt, I'll second.
All right, any discussion, questions?
Yes, we sold them some land, didn't we? And none of that worked? The land didn't work, so you give them?
Oh, no, it
It did, okay. They were gonna come down to 5 spaces then, right? All the parking's on that land, got it. Awesome, cool. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Okay, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, okay, we'll move to the brickwork self-storage preliminary land development plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Brickworks Self-Storage is proposing a 72,000 square foot, 3-story, climate-controlled self-storage facility with 568 storage units at approximately 250 Science Park Road. And actually, we've received the actual address from the county today, or last week, 222 Science Park Road, with access via the vacated portion along the west side of the property of the old Science Park Road. The applicant acquired a portion of underutilized Science Park Road right-of-way in an effort to improve the viability of the proposed development. Lot consolidation plan was submitted concurrently to the land development plan, consolidating the acquired right-of-way and the half of the vacated old Science Park Road right-of-way. The proposed development will be in the IRD zoning district and the corridor overlay district. And with approval of the modification waivers, the only remaining staff review comments are administrative in nature. The Planning Commission did review this as well and is recommending approval of the land development plan.
All right, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion?
This is Matt. I move to approve the Brickwork Self-Storage Preliminary Land Development Plan.
This is Mark.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, any discussion or questions on this item? Not seeing any. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, okay, we'll move to discussion on Chapter 26, Stormwater Management, and authorization to advertise a public hearing on stormwater management ordinance, and we'll go to Dave Modricker for this item.
So earlier this evening, you heard a presentation on this matter under the reports. And so this is now that same item under an action item, asking that the board review or comment on either proposed revisions and authorize staff to advertise and draft ordinance for a public hearing.
All right, thank you. Would anyone care to make this motion?
This is Matt. I move that the Board of Supervisors reviews and comments on the proposed revisions and authorize staff to advertise the draft ordinance for a public hearing.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, any discussion on this item?
As long as the
Yes.
comments I made earlier were captured, I think I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I was actually curious about the motion. We already did it.
Reviews and comments on first item.
Are we just authorizing staff to advertise changes made based on the comments and then the move forward?
I think these are
Right,
ones
this-
that DEP required, is that right?
Yeah. This is from, the earlier presentation.
And
That's correct.
And we also could add comments now in discussion. if we
Exactly,
wanted to.
yes.
That would
There-
also be
yes.
captured, is how I'm interpreting.
Yeah, that
this.
is that is now.
Okay.
Yeah, so Matt's comment was that just confirming earlier comments were captured, and I'm not seeing any additional comments, but there's time, if anybody had any.
There's lots of time. Tomorrow's a long way away.
Not all the time in the world.
No, we've had meetings into the next day.
Yes, unfortunately, yep. Yep. All right, so if there's nothing else on this, and we know staff captured those earlier comments from the presentation, we have, I believe, a motion and a second. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, okay, communications to the board.
Just the feedback from neighbors about how wonderful the municipal mixer was, and thank you.
All right, okay, anything else?
I had communications related to food trucks, wondering if it was possible to have just one approval process across all of COG essentially, instead of municipalities having, maybe not. Anyway, also the water at Fairbrook Park being turned off, and another comment related to Rock Springs and the water quality there and concerns about disaster recovery if something goes south. So more to follow on those.
Okay, all right, anything else? Sidewalk requirements that I'm gonna forward on to staff to better respond to. All right, I'm not seeing anything else. So there's a number of calendar items noted, and the office is closed on Labor Day.
I will
Yes.
note that I recommend for consideration that we cancel the special meeting scheduled for August. We have a board member or likely one or more board members that are unavailable to attend. And the design was to do a work session education on our local ordinance. And I would recommend that we have that discussion at a time where staff can confirm that all members are available to attend.
This is the workforce housing.
Yeah, for opportunities to discuss the workforce housing.
So we had done kind of a regional and county, workforce housing 101, and now this will be the Ferguson Township. What is our ordinance, kind of educational 101, so that we can all be on the same page and fully informed on what's there. So thank you for that, and we'll follow up
Yep,
on
there'll be a
that, so.
communication that goes out to confirm.
Okay, sounds good. All right, if there is nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I'll second, and we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
That's when I